All right, let's start going with the main show. Listen to some of this hearing. It was the oversight of the oversight of the ATF. Let's go ahead and.
I'm from California. Mr. Cray is recognized.
Okay,
Thank you,
I
Mr.
have
Chairman.
control of
Thank you
that.
for holding this most important hearing. Mr. Director Dittelbach, thank you for being here today. Ms. Milanowski, I just want to say prayers are with you, with your family in this very difficult moment. I hope beyond the heated debate that we're having here today, we actually come up with better public policies to minimize the loss of life in these public safety.
I'm going to be playing some Forza Motorsport and just listening to this.
The enforcement actions. I also, Mr. Dittelbach, would like to know what's it going to take to get those body cameras out in the field. What's it going? How fast can we do it?
We have them across a third of the United States having received no program increase at all, and we take that money and we balance it with stopping gangs that are killing people, stopping cartels, as Chairman Rogers pointed out, that are the most dangerous organizations in the world, going after trigger pullers, homicide cases, carjackings. So we have made programmatic requests that are open to the public. 13 million in 2023, 37 million.
How fast can we get them out to the other two-thirds that don't
Right,
have
I'm
the
saying
body?
we have a pending request for a programmatic increase of $37.8 million. It's the same request we made
How long
last
do you
year that
think
was
it's going
not
to take
given.
to implement? How long will this take to implement?
Currently, with what we have now, without anything else, we will be implemented across the country by end of 2026. If there's more resources, we can try to speed that up. But it's
I,
not
as a
just
member of Congress, hope I'm speaking for a few folks here, hope that we can, expedite body cams being worn by our agents out there. This is an important issue. Love to work with you however we can to make sure that happens. And if I may, I'm going to ask you my first question, which is, how do you guys work with state, local, international agencies to protect our public?
Congressman.
You were out in Orange County recently, my part of the town.
I was, and we there got to recognize work of the Orange County Violent Crime Task Force, which is a great example of how we work shoulder to shoulder with a variety of local police departments. And what we do is we target the worst of the worst. So there was a case out there I remember hearing about. It was a series of Hobbs Act robberies that resulted in the death and murder of clerks at 7-Elevens, I believe. And that's a case where we partner with local law enforcement. And ATF has a little bit of a different way of doing this. If the most appropriate punishment is in the state courts and it's murder, that's fine with us. We're not looking for necessarily only federal cases. We look to do the
Directly,
case.
let me interrupt you. I've got a couple
Sure,
more questions here. August 22nd, I sent you a letter requesting your help, your partnership, specifically on a
Go
gun
with the Audi.
buyback program, voluntary gun buyback program that we implement in my district. Didn't get the support there, and I think it's important because this is a program where citizens voluntarily show up, free market, here's 200 bucks, here's a weapon I had at home that I haven't touched in 40 years. Yet ATF, have you been working on those, or what is it that we can do to get you to work with us on those very successful programs?
So with those programs, and I think, of course, we value public safety and we value state and local agencies' determinations of what protects them. With respect to gun buyback programs, that's usually a decision and a program run by the state and local agencies, not the federal agencies.
We need your help in executing those.
Well, sometimes agencies can and do apply for burn grant money that can support their
good enough for
comprehensive
now.
plans, but ATF does not get involved in the actual operation of gun buyback programs. That is done by state and local authorities.
We'll talk some more later, but I do think these are important programs. You get guns off the street, guns that people don't want anymore. They'd rather have $100, $200 in their hand as opposed to a weapon. Cost effective, nobody gets hurt, and we do need your help. It's local, but we need ATF's database to make sure when those guns are brought back,
ATF shouldn't have a
run them through
database.
a database to see if they've been involved in any crimes. to make sure that those are guns that we can take off the street without destroying evidence. Go ahead, sir. I've got
No,
20
Congressman, thank
seconds.
you. We will work with you. I commit to you that we will get back to you and your staff on that.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield the rest of my time.
I thank the gentleman. I recognize myself now. Director, you accused a dead man of a crime of illegally selling in the back seat a weapon. Would I hear that correctly?
Respectfully, what I did was talked about the public search warrant affidavit that was filed and proved
I
by the judge.
understand, but you're standing by your search warrant. You're standing by the fact that in the search warrant, you're alleging that he had committed a crime. Is that correct?
Come on.
Chairman, respectfully, I was making the point that a
No,
federal
no, no,
magistrate...
you're not being respectful. Answer the question. The question is, did you allege that he had committed a felony, a crime, in your affidavit?
The judge did find
I haven't raced in a
Okay.
while.
Well, I'll take that as the judge found it because you alleged it. So you alleged the
Let's see
crime,
how
but
this
you
goes.
didn't seek to arrest him, did you? Do you
Again,
have an arrest warrant for Mr. Malinowski?
My understanding... Now,
That's a yes or no, Director.
my understanding is that there was not an arrest warrant. I don't have the full investigative file, but that is
Okay,
my
you
understanding.
came here, you knew we were going to ask, you saw yesterday, and now you're playing one of the games that the chairman and I didn't like during Fast and Furious. We don't like it now. If you want to be back here again, because you can't seem to know what you should know, what Mrs. Malinowski deserves to know. If some group of 10 carloads of people showed up and kicked in a door in the dark of night, and somebody came and shot at them, we wouldn't be talking about somebody getting shot in the toe. We'd be talking exclusively about a planned murder of somebody who may or may not be armed, but who had every right to have weapons in their home, an expectation they had weapons in their home, an expectation
game is
that they
taking
might
forever
use
to
it.
load.
All of that, you don't have to be ATF to know. So let's go back on track here again. If you had a belief that he had committed a crime, and if your intent was to arrest him, then that would explain why a week earlier you've called off an already authorized search because you were only going to search for the weapons, you weren't going to search for him. Isn't that correct?
Respectfully, Mr. Chairman, I am not able and will not. It's not fair to do this during the pendency of a criminal investigation.
No, look, it's always, I'm sorry, but DOJ and you guys, it's always, you could go on forever. Hunter Biden's over. Why didn't you do a no-knock on him at his home with the vice president?
To be clear, this isn't our investigation. We in the Little Rock Police asked an outside investigation be conducted by the Arkansas State Police. It's their investigation. The district attorney is going to review that.
And I hope they appropriately find that in spite of qualified immunity, that you blew it badly enough that in fact criminal charges should be considered.
I hope they just find whatever the truth is.
What is the penalty for the crime alleged on the affidavit for selling a weapon not as a licensed dealer? What's the penalty?
Oh, my Lord. Mr. Chairman, I believe it's a 10-year felony, and there are two different crimes. It might be a 5-year and a 10-year felony.
Okay.
I want to get back to you to make sure that there's a series of statutes that run all in a row there. I want to make sure I'm not mixing up the statutes.
5 years or it's 10 years. It's not a death penalty. Is that correct?
There is not a death penalty for that statute, no.
Okay, so Mr. Malinowski was not in any danger of being executed for what he is alleged to have done and no longer can defend himself because he's dead. But he was killed doing what any normal citizen does when people enter their home in the dark of night and they don't know who they are. If you had body cameras, maybe Mrs. Malinowski didn't hear right. Maybe you said police and identified yourself. Maybe he said, I don't care, and maybe he fired the shots. I don't believe that, and I don't think you do either. I believe he had every real belief that he was defending his wife and family. He fired warning shots. Ricochet hit a police officer,
that was
an ATF
terrible.
agent, and you killed him. Those are the facts. I have been investigating ATF for many years, and ATF agents have, rightfully so, and with great trepidation, I'm sure, come forth and been our whistleblowers. And we've consistently seen there are two ATFs: the one we need and want and deserve, and the one that plays fast and loose, like 10 cars going in deliberately with a warrant that did not entitle an arrest, when in fact, if you wanted to arrest him, it would have been reasonable to
This
arrest
is just
him at
practice.
work and simultaneously go into his home. If you had done that, he'd be alive today, and we'd be talking about other things, including whether you acted legally. With that, I yield back. And
Which I definitely need.
Scanlon for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Director, for your testimony here today. The ranking member mentioned that every single day, 120 Americans are shot and killed, and more than 200 are wounded. Those numbers find statistics. Every one is an American with a family and neighbors and friends. Yesterday morning at 8:30 a.m., a gunman killed 2 people and injured 3 others at a small family-owned business in Chester, Pennsylvania, right down the street from my office. 5 people were shot. Their co-workers and community were traumatized just for showing up at work in the morning. This unrelenting, unnecessary daily toll of gun violence is hitting families in every community across our country. Yesterday, it happened in Chester, a post-industrial city that straddles Interstate 95, which is known in law enforcement as the Iron Pipeline, because it's the route that gun traffickers regularly use to smuggle weapons from states with weak gun laws to states with stricter ones. Senseless violence is outrageous, but it's not inevitable. There are things we can do. This violence is enabled by lawmakers who choose to do nothing, who block legislation in the wake of tragedy after tragedy, while the American people are crying out for real action. Whenever Democrats try to explore how Congress can act to stem this uniquely American carnage, our Republican colleagues say the solution is to enforce the laws that are already on the books. But here we are once again in a hearing in which Republicans are attacking ATF, the law enforcement agency.
Still fucked up that
charged with primary
one turn.
responsibility for enforcing gun safety laws across our country. And it comes while our Republican colleagues have bills to abolish ATF and have succeeded in getting cuts to its budget. So, Director Dunlap, I want to turn our focus to what might be real solutions and your agency's role in helping to implement them. You spoke in your testimony about a 1,000% increase in ghost guns linked to crimes over the past 5 years. Whenever I speak to law enforcement, including last night, they talk to me about how worried they are about the rapid proliferation of ghost guns. Ghost gun recoveries increased by over 400% in Philadelphia between 2019 and 2021. Our Delaware County Police busted a gun trafficker who was building and testing ghost guns in an apartment across the street from our county courthouse. And our Montgomery County Police recently busted a whole ghost gun trafficking ring. These fully functioning, untraceable firearms can be bought without a background check. They can be ordered online and in less than an hour become a firearm as deadly as any sold by a gun dealer. And that's why they've become, as you noted, a weapon of choice for people who might be otherwise barred from purchasing criminals. So, am I correct that ghost guns look like regular guns and shoot like regular guns and kill like regular guns?
You are.
Okay. Now, can you explain why they're posing such a danger to the American public and why ATF determined it was necessary to issue a rule amending the definition of frame receiver to ensure that ghost guns are treated like other equally lethal firearms under our laws?
Congresswoman, the reason is, as you said, under our laws. Under the Gun Control Act, Congress specifically provided that items that were readily convertible to being operable firearms should be treated as firearms. The market was out there producing items that were readily convertible, and they were being sold without background checks. I did myself. I took one of these kits and put the gun together. My spouse will tell you I'm not that handy around the house. It was very easy for me to make a firearm, take it to the range, firing. These are firearms that shoot, wound, and kill, like firearms that are sold in the traditional manner. Congress anticipated that problem. The market changed. We issued a rule to make sure that Congress's statute was appropriately enforced.
And we appreciate that, given the constant innovation that we see from gun manufacturers and those who seek to evade the existing laws. If we were to wait for Congress to catch up all the time, we'd be in a lot of trouble. Chairman, I would ask unanimous
There we go.
consent to enter into the record a letter from ATF's Acting Deputy Assistant Director for Public and Governmental Affairs in which he responded to your letter regarding the execution of a search warrant on Mr. Malinowski's residence and about ATF's compliance with DOJ's body-worn camera policy.
Objection.
Okay, just so you're aware of which letter it is, it's the one May 21st that responded to your request, which you referenced earlier.
Objection.
Thank you, and it discusses the funding necessary.
Got it.
Got it.
All right,
I
where's
yield
my
back.
value,
Yields
madam?
back. The
Okay.
gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the ATF has a final rule. I think the comments and the rule itself accumulate to about 466 pages that define
ATF
who's
is-
engaged in the business of firearms dealing. So how many firearms does someone have to sell to be engaged in the business of firearm dealing?
Congressman, as you know, that matter is being litigated in several courts. So sticking to what's already in the public record, the rule itself is 16 pages, skipping lines. And there's a few pages, over 400 pages of explanation. And so there are factors that are conduct-based, not numerical-based, but conduct-based. There's also, we received many comments. One of the comments that we received was from, I think, Senator Cornyn, who expressed the view that there was no numerical threshold. Others had a different view.
Yeah. In the House Judiciary Committee, we probably won't look to Senator Cornyn as the oracle of all things gun rights. But, as to so you're saying there really is no number?
I'm saying that Congress, our job is to implement the statute that Congress writes.
Yeah, no, but
Congress
just like for a
didn't
regular person,
I shall
that
turn the game
one
down
form or
a little
another
bit.
acquires guns, and they're trying to figure out how many of these guns do I sell before I have to register as a dealer. What you're saying is there is no bright line there.
I'm saying that there's now more information than ever in the form of that rule for specific
No, but
conduct-based.
I think just for a regular person, more information than ever is probably less helpful than if you sell 3 guns, you're not a dealer, and if you sell 4 guns, then you are a dealer, right? And this rule that you guys have drafted, it's currently enjoined, right? It has no effect.
There are 3 cases that I know of, maybe more going on now. One of the judges has issued equitable relief.
So in Texas, a judge has stopped the implementation of this law for 3 reasons. One is that there's no minimum
trying to do
requirement.
something.
And the court has found, this court in Texas, that you are just giving effect and life to Congress's statutes. You've in fact exceeded your authority, because Congress would have never allowed some sort of sliding scale where 16 pages of single-spaced whatever determines whether or not you're a firearm dealer, not how many guns you sell. There's a second reason that court in Texas said that this would not have effect, and it's that actual profit is not a requirement of the statute, only the predominant intent for profit. How do you understand that ruling?
Again, that's in litigation. The Department of Justice's positions on each and every one of these matters is public. It is laid out in many, many pages of briefing. And so I would ask people to look at our briefs that we filed in the court, and I would commend your attention
No, but
to that.
if someone's just trying to figure out whether or not they have to get a federal license or be subject to your guys breaking their doors down and potentially killing them, you would think that you'd want that to be easily understandable. And here, even if someone isn't turning a profit, but they might want to turn a profit, they could be subject to this regulation, and the court found that troubling. And then the third reason the court identified is that your rule doesn't just give meaning to Congress's statute, but that, quote, arbitrarily eviscerates the safe harbor provision. So there's a safe harbor provision of this law that says if you're just engaged in the occasional sale or exchange or purchase of a firearm, for a personal collection or a hobby, that this regulatory structure wouldn't affect you. But what the court is saying here in blocking your rule is that you have eviscerated the safe harbor that exists for the hobbyist. Do you have a reaction to that rule?
Again, yes, our position is not that, but it's under litigation. We have filed extensive.
but
I
you
got
are
an
making
off-track
an argument.
violation.
They're
Oops.
sitting here in court trying to figure out what Congress means. What we're saying is there should definitely be a bright line in terms of guns. You shouldn't have to have this pondering question about profit motive, and you shouldn't eviscerate the safe harbor. That's what we're saying. So what's your argument as to why the safe harbor should be eviscerated?
Our argument is to look to the statute that Congress wrote. The statute that Congress wrote, and I just want to make clear that people understand this. There was an earlier comment about the word livelihood. That's not in the law anymore that Congress wrote. Congress took that out of the law. It doesn't exist anymore.
Nope.
So we start with the statute. That's where things always begin and end.
I know you started with the statute, but what this court is saying is that you have exceeded the statute. You've done it in a way that eviscerates
Damn
the
it.
safe harbor,
Come on.
that blurs the lines, and that creates no discernible way for people to comply with the law. And the reason I think you guys are doing that is you want to make it more difficult for people to engage in the legal, lawful, and constitutionally contemplated manner to transfer firearms, and you're trying to criminalize an entire enterprise. And that's why you see us trying to curtail some of your funding and your authority. I see my time's expired, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Director Dettelbach. Thank you for coming before the Judiciary Committee again. I really appreciate it. I know that the work that you do really saves lives. I know that, and it protects our communities. It helps many of us sleep a little bit better at night, me in particular. I, for one, as well as many of my colleagues here, we do truly understand that the ATF plays a pivotal role in preventing gun violence.
Ah,
by
fuck the
removing gun
ATF.
traffickers from our neighborhoods, ensuring that only lawful and abiding gun owners can purchase firearms, and assisting law enforcement at every level in solving gun crimes. And this committee has had many field hearings on victims of violent crimes. Well, it's ATF's job to do so, to do that very thing, to bring our perpetrators that are violent crimes, to bring them to justice. The most logical thing for us to do today is find ways to support you, to support ATF's mission to reduce violent gun crimes. We should not
No,
defund,
God damn it.
or we should not abolish the ATF. The very agency
Yes, we should.
is actually eliminating any semblance of need for victims of violent crime hearing anywhere in this country. And today we need to hear from you, Director. You know, if you can just tell us, we need to find out from you how we can actually assist you and support the ATF and its mission to reduce illegal firearm use.
Ooh, I am sucking on these corners.
Firearm threats, protect our families, our friends, and our fellow Americans. Director Dettelbach, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the most significant gun safety legislation that we've had in almost 30 years, has made tremendous progress. And I've been monitoring the progress of this package of work in eliminating gun violence as a public health crisis. And the initiatives that have been set forth in this law include parts of my plan for the implementation of extremist protection orders on those programs, and also laws that ensure that firearms are not in the hands of those in court who have been found through the due process to be a danger to themselves or to the community. And then also funding for community violence interventions in that program, in that package of work as well, and working to close the gun shoulder. But my colleagues, Director Dettelbach, have touched on how ATF cuts have affected state and local law enforcement. Would you like to expand on that for us? Because this is really important, critical information that I think the country really needs to hear.
Protecting Americans from violent crime is at the core of everything we do at ATF. And that means that so many of our strategies and resources depend on supporting local law enforcement. Sheriff's departments, police departments, state police. I go and meet with those folks everywhere I go all the time. And the things that we do help them to close homicide cases, arrest gang members, get carjackers in Philadelphia off the street, stop the southbound flow of firearms through our 9 trafficking strike forces on the border to the cartels that present a danger to public safety in all those towns, for all those sheriffs across the border. We do all of those things every day, and on top of it, our CJICs, our Crime Gun Intelligence Centers, which are being put up all over the country, are places where local, state, federal agents sit together, often with prosecutors, and evaluate violent crime cases in real time so that the next morning we can be out on the streets investigating the most violent people. Budget cuts make all of that
Way off track.
less and harder. Everybody wants a CJIC. We can't give everybody a CJIC because we don't have enough money for that. And if we cut more money, we're cutting those crime gun intelligence centers that lead to operations that day, the next week, that get violent criminals off the street.
So am I correct
Come
in
on.
understanding then that you need full support and
I need a
funding
lot of
from ATF?
practice. Been a while.
Yes, not just me. The agents who are out there risking their lives need and deserve that support.
And might I say, being a mother who lost her son to gun violence, I will tell you that law enforcement work very hard on our behalf. I know they do this work every single day, and I'm just really grateful for the ATF. I'm grateful for the law enforcement. I am grateful for those that are on the front lines every single day doing everything that you express because it's vital, it's necessary, and this is a public health crisis. Thank you for the work that you're doing and all the agents and people that work with you.
Oh, should have stopped way earlier.
Now you're back.
I'm not doing that rewind thing.
Director, have you ever been a cop?
Excuse me?
Have you ever been a cop?
I have not been a police officer. I was a prosecutor.
So you don't have decades of law enforcement experience, but you said you worked with law enforcement, right? That's fair to say, right?
I was a prosecutor for over 20 years in
You worked
5
with- you
different
worked-
offices.
You worked with law enforcement. You aren't law enforcement. So is it common for ATF to turn off the power to a location prior to executing a search warrant?
Is it common for us to do that? I do not believe it is a common thing that we do.
You're the director. You either know it is common or you don't know whether it's common.
I thought I answered the question. I'm sorry.
Is it common?
It's my understanding is it's not common, and I want to be very careful to say I'm not commenting on any case because I'm not sure until the facts come in.
Did I ask you
God
about
damn
a
it.
specific case?
I
sir?
did it again.
Did not, did I? I asked you about
I'm gonna do the
policy.
rewind
You
thing.
just
I
said
have
it's
to.
not common. Next, does the ATF
Just started
use
paying
RF
attention to
frequency
this
jamming
video.
technology to prevent the internet and cell phones from working?
Sir, I'm sorry.
Does the ATF use RF frequency jamming technology to prevent the internet and cell phones from working during the execution of a search warrant?
Again, I am not going to sit here, and I guess I maybe should have said this before, and comment on the tactics that we use.
Gotta pay attention.
When we go into dangerous places, because it provides a blueprint for criminals
So let's
to hurt us.
get this straight then. You told us you won't answer anything specifically about a case. Now you're saying you're not going to tell us generically.
Maybe we can contact your staff in private setting and have a conversation
okay,
instead
so-
of broadcasting
next-
for all the criminals.
Does the ATF use dynamic entry as their means for entry during the execution of a search warrant? Does the ATF still use dynamic entry as their means for entry during the execution of a search warrant?
Again, I don't think it's appropriate. We can communicate with you on these kinds of training issues. I just don't want to give a public blueprint for people tomorrow and the next day who are going to be facing law enforcement through the door to know how we're coming, what we're doing.
Do you assess pattern of life as a part of risk assessment conducted prior to executing a search warrant? Can you
I
answer
think
that
that's
one?
far enough afield that I could say, depending on the case, we can assess pattern of life at times, of course. Depends on the case, right? Some cases it's appropriate, some cases it's not. These are I don't do this, right? The career law enforcement people, as you pointed out, do this with decades of experience. I don't
One more left.
quarterback them either.
But here's the deal. You're the director. And I would expect that you would know what the policy is. And it looks to me, you've convinced me that maybe Mr. Nels was right. I'm not sure that I thought he was right. But you didn't want to tell us specifically about the Malinowski case. I got that. I think it's wrong. I think it's a false narrative. But then when I start asking you about policies, generic policies. Now all of a sudden you don't want to answer those.
Mr.
So
Congress-
when you coordinate with local law enforcement you do coordinate with local law enforcement prior to the execution of a search warrant.
In most cases, yes. There are certainly most of our cases we're doing shoulder to shoulder with law enforcement. And
These are
local
yes or no
police.
questions. Thank you for answering yes. Is it the ATF's practice to instruct law enforcement partners to turn off their body cameras when participating in search and warrants
No,
with ATF?
too late. Too late.
ATF's written policies that are in our MOUs is that if a local law enforcement agency has a body-worn camera policy and we're going on one of these short-term operations, they are entitled to follow their own policy if they wish. That
I
is
fucked
that
up.
is in black and white.
Can you tell us the difference on how the ATF would handle a search warrant on a violent felon versus an individual who allegedly sold a
Oh,
few
well.
firearms without a license? Is there a distinction in your mind? Is that in ATF's?
In every case, we do risk assessment, and it's dependent upon all the facts and circumstances of any particular matter. So in every case we do it, but you can't boil it down to one or two things. It's a risk assessment that experts who are risking their lives conduct.
How does the ATF balance the need for operational security and the need for the safety to the public?
You have to do, you're asking about balancing, I think you said operational security, and we have to keep the public safe. That's obviously paramount, but police officers are entitled to go home alive at the end of their shift also, and we also have to make sure that we're doing that as well.
Okay,
You have to do both.
So you didn't answer the question. The question presupposed exactly what you just said. We know that you have to balance it. How do you balance it? That's the question. How do you balance it?
The answer is both are paramount, and we have to do both in each operation. But I will tell you this, there's no such thing for a police officer as no risk. They sign up, we sign up, the agents sign up to risk their lives. And they often go
Oh,
into
I
very
won.
dangerous situations in order to do that, so there's no way to mitigate all
That's
of their
some
risk,
easy shit.
sometimes very dangerous risk from any operation.
And we understand that. We appreciate that. Now, I have to say that you didn't answer Mr. Massey's our letters to you. I'm hoping that you said you're going to give us additional responses to the questions I've asked you today. I would anticipate that you'd give more fulsome answers than you gave us regarding the pipe bombing issue.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Dettelbach, thank you for being here. One major cause of migration into the United States is instability and violence in parts of Central America, which is partly fueled by the flow of firearms from the United States into Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. ATF reported that more than half of crime guns recovered in Central America, 70% of crime guns in Mexico, and 80% of crime guns in Caribbean countries are sourced from the United States, fueling instability and migration. But my Republican colleagues have refused to support common sense gun safety legislation that would fight the flow of American guns across the southern border and help address the root causes of migration. Instead, House Republicans have continued to criticize the Bureau, undermine resources to allow officers to do their jobs, and oppose common sense gun safety legislation at almost every turn. Could you describe any recent or current trends that ATF has found regarding the flow of firearms from the United States into Mexico and Central America?
So ATF's job obviously includes firearms trafficking. And one of the types of firearms trafficking we're seeing, right, there's domestic firearms trafficking that goes to California
let's
and
go.
New York and places all over
Load
the country.
video
There's also
game.
southbound firearms trafficking. And it is accurate to say, and we shouldn't be reticent to say it, it's the truth, that our firearms that are going across the border southbound are helping to arm the cartels.
That's right.
So what do we see? We have 9 task forces that are southbound task forces set up along the border. They work with state and local law enforcement. They work with DHS. And we have the opposite problem, right? Other people are trying to stop things from coming north. We're focused on stopping firearms trafficking going south. They're related sometimes. But Congresswoman, what we see is that criminal organizations, including the cartels, are using our freedoms against us. So they're developing straw purchasing networks, for instance, where they're going into firearms stores and sending somebody in there without a record, paying them a small amount of money.
Right.
And
I can
getting
see that
them to buy
happening.
large military-grade weapons, 50s, that can be easily converted to machine guns down south, paying in cash and doing it over and over and over again. So what are we doing? We're working with firearms licensees across the southwest border and now increasingly elsewhere because the cartels adapt, right? One of the things you asked about trends, they're going elsewhere now, not just on the southwest border. They're going to
I'm going to pause this, let this game load, and grab a beer. I will be right back. Oh, had myself muted. Forgot about that. Yeah, I had to switch games. I switched to Grid because Forza Motorsport isn't working right. I have to switch it from my hard disk drive to my solid state drive. So that'll be whatever else later on. But I'm going to continue with this hearing and play some Grid, which is just another racing game. Because it's just mindless shit that I can play while listening to this bullshit about the ATF, because fuck the ATF. And I would just want to start doing this like how Senpai does on Voice of the People on Rumble. I'm going to be doing it on here and on my Stabbing Like OJ YouTube. Listening to hearings, getting it out there, because most people won't sit and listen to these, so maybe sit and listen to it with me, jump in the chat, have some fun. I'll be gaming, same thing that he does. It'll be some mindless type games, probably. Stuff like that. Maybe I might play Helldivers while listening to this. Sometimes, we'll see. But, yeah, back to it.
To other states to try to arm themselves. So these
I haven't
are
played Grid in
disturbing
forever
trends.
either. We'll see how it goes.
These are very sophisticated, vicious organizations, and the ATF and our partners are doing everything we can. Interdictions, southbound interdictions are up in double
Not a
digits
fan of these
year
truck
over year.
races.
We're very proud of that.
They suck.
But we should not fool ourselves that the problem is solved. These are very wealthy, aggressive, violent entities.
Thank you. When you were here last year, we discussed your partnership with state and local law enforcement to implement the Stop Illegal Trafficking in Firearms Act, which Congress included in the 2022 Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. You've spoken about some elements, but could you provide any other additional update on your extensive efforts to implement that legislation?
I'm going to play an old race.
So there were two separate
I'm going to play an old race first so I get used to this, because I haven't played it in a while.
criminal statutes that Congress created. One of them was a straw purchasing statute, first ever. The other is the trafficking statute. Both have been exceedingly useful, both in individual cases of firearms trafficking and in larger organizational efforts with respect to cartels and criminal organizations all over the country. So these are tools that we continue to use. We continue to work with the U.S. Attorney's community in appropriate cases to get appropriate punishments in those matters. There are new statutes. And again, as I said, what I explained to everybody and what we explained to judges is that firearms trafficking is not a victimless crime. We don't see the victim in front of us, but so often the firearms, 60% of those trafficked firearms are going to felons and prohibited people, and they're using to hurt innocent, law-abiding Americans. That's what we have to do to implement. We have to make people understand that the distributors are also responsible if they're breaking the law.
And just quickly, many of the guns recovered from crime scenes south of the border are bought legally in the United States. How can we stop that from happening, and what resources do you need from Congress?
Well, when a firearm is purchased legally in the United States and it crosses the border, that's a little bit different, right? That's a situation where those whose full-time job it is to police the border are probably the lead. At ATF, what we do is we try to focus on illegal activity, the black market in firearms. Now, it's a little bit ambiguous, Congresswoman, because of course something can look like a legal sale, but it's really a straw purchaser.
Right.
And that's why when somebody walks into a store who doesn't even know really what to ask for, plunks down $12,552 in cash, and they're 20 miles from the border, and there's somebody waiting outside in the parking lot for them that dropped them off, that we depend on so many firearms dealers to figure out a way to pick up the phone and help us, and they do quite often. But then what happens is the cartels look for the one that won't do that, right? So we have to get the word out to a minority of dealers. Not the majority are trying to do the right thing, the minority of dealers, because the enemy, the cartels, are seeking them out to try to find weak links.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from California is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Dettelbach, I'm just curious. Have you expressed remorse to Mr. Malinowski's widow and family?
I'm sorry.
Have you expressed remorse to Mr. Malinowski's widow?
I will now, and I have before this morning, yes.
What have you said to them?
Well, I said it here in open forum, but what
have
I
you
said
to
was,
them
of
personally?
course,
Have you
when-
talked
of
to
cour-
them personally?
I'm sorry.
Have you talked to them personally? Have you expressed your sympathy?
God damn.
Or you just make
gentleman
public
yield?
statements and issue press releases?
Would the gentleman yield?
No. Answer the question, please.
Yes.
He just did it.
All right, thank you. Did you know about this raid in advance?
We do 11,000 operations a year, and
did you know
I
about
believe that, and it would
Did
be.
you know about this one, Mr. Delbach? Yes or no?
And I believe the first I heard about this matter was after the fact.
And who have you disciplined? What have you done?
Sorry,
What
have you done?
in
Is
response to it?
what
That's a lot faster of a race
went
than
together with the.
I would have
Little
wanted
Rock
at
police,
first.
Who were also present. We went and we requested an outside agency.
This
to do an
racing is a
independent
lot different than,
investigation. We fully
Forza.
cooperated with that investigation. That investigation, my understanding is the file has now been turned over.
I think this committee is going to want to look into this matter in much greater detail. I need to press on. Let me just ask you a general question. What do you think is the purpose of the Second Amendment?
Like all the amendments, the purpose of the Second Amendment is to protect fundamental rights of Americans.
And you believe that a fundamental right of America includes the right to bear arms?
I believe that all the rights in the Bill of Rights
That
are
car's
important
getting
and
fucked
fundamental
up.
rights, including the Second Amendment.
In the second half of 2021, only 34 inspections led to a firearms dealer having their license revoked. However, the number of qualifying violations dramatically increased to 252 in 2022 and jumped again to 407 in 2023. Now, either there's been an exponential increase in crooked firearms dealers since Biden took over, or there's been an exponential increase in zealotry by your agency. I assume you would say it's the latter.
The laws that Congress has passed and have been in effect say that willful violators of the Gun Control Act are subject to, they may have their licenses
We've seen
revoked.
an exponential increase. I mean, just off the charts since you took office. And that seems to coincide with a dramatic reduction in people willing to legally expose themselves to pre-dawn raids on their homes. The number of voluntary business closures post-inspection has risen sharply from 24 in 2021 to 69 in 2022 to 80 in 2023. Now, this tells me that this is a deliberate policy to drive firearms dealers out of the business, not only with the reign of legal terror, but in the case of Mr. Malinowski, the actual reign of physical terror as well. Now, I know you're not going to agree with that, but can you at least see how that appears to others?
Respectfully, I disagree. The enhanced enforcement policy, which is publicly available, the terms of it, state very clearly that we're not talking about paperwork violations. We're talking about willful violations that impact on public safety, like refusing to run a background check, selling to a felon, not respond.
What we're seeing is an exponential increase in actions against dealers, followed by an exponential increase in dealers just saying, this isn't worth the legal exposure. I'm out of here. What's involved in getting a federal firearms license?
There is a process to get a license, right? You fill out an application, you pay a $200 fee, and there's a compliance inspection, or not a compliance inspection, an application inspection that goes on. But just like the inspections and the process, for a revocation, for a compliance matter, there is ample due process. There are hearings that go on, and in our own hearings,
It's a fairly lengthy process. Now, your agency's rule says, quote, that even a single transaction or offer to engage in a trend, or offer
Doing
to
terrible.
engage in a transaction, when combined with other evidence, may be sufficient to require a license as an FFL. What does that mean?
that is one sentence out of a 16-page rule.
Well, what does that
The
sentence-
rule says, this is a matter before the courts. Our positions on all of these things are in pages and pages of briefs that it would take far too long, and I know you have time limits, but I refer you to those briefs. It's not a secret, but what I would say to you is, it says in black and white, things that might lead to a determination under the totality of circumstances that somebody is engaged in the business and things that don't.
So if somebody admires my gun collection and I say, you want to buy it, would that require an FFL?
There is a specific provision that Congress has passed that says that people who are bona fide collectors can liquidate their collections without becoming a licensee.
That's not what this rule
But of course you would have, and I think that's what you described, but you'd have to look at obviously the whole.
That's not what your new rule says.
Respectfully, I disagree. It says in black and white that is allowed.
Gentleman yields back. Director, we've been at it an hour and 45 minutes. Just recognize if you need a break, just let us know, and we'll be happy to take a break. If not, if you're willing, we'll keep going. Before I recognize the gentleman from California, you were getting ready to say you had an outside investigation and you turned it over to, and you didn't say who's that's been turned over to.
I believe they publicly announced, the Arkansas State Police, that they turned over their investigative file to the 6th District Prosecutor's Office. It's Pulaski County, Arkansas, the state prosecutors. And I believe
take a look at something.
this is all public. I haven't had contact with them because I want to make sure that it's independent, right?
Yeah.
But I believe that they're reviewing it.
Okay.
That part, I think we know that they're reviewing it.
Got it. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Director, welcome. And I want to thank you and the brave men and women in law enforcement who serve your agency every day. And I've got some questions for you in a moment. But there's something that is imminent and I'm concerned about because it just...
This fucking guy slept with the fucking Chinese agent and shit. I hate this dude.
Put a target on the back of everybody in law enforcement at the federal level and the local level.
He's such a smug prick.
Is a statement that one of our colleagues made earlier this week. And we have jurisdiction over the FBI as well as the ATF. But Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia said, the Biden DOJ and FBI were planning to assassinate President Trump and gave the green light. Does everyone get it yet? What are Republicans going to do about it? This is quite a concerning statement from an elected member of Congress because this false statement creates the pretext for violence. It suggests to Americans, who, by the way, are armed to the teeth, we're a country where the most dangerous people have access to the most dangerous weapons.
Of course.
It suggests
Get all fucked up.
that their own government and the people who wear the badge are out to assassinate the former president. And I just want to first clear up this falsity. And the FBI this week has issued a statement to do that. But first and foremost, the search at Mar-a-Lago, the former president was not there. And that was intentional. So if there was an effort to assassinate the former president, they went at a time when he was not there. Second, the former president was actually treated better than most people during a raid because the FBI didn't go in with their raid jackets. They wore polo shirts to show a little bit of respect to the former president and not make it a raid-like environment. Third, standard use of force procedures were followed during that search as they were followed in every search, including, fourth, the same search procedures and use of force policy that was used to retrieve documents at President Biden's Delaware residence. This is a pretext for violence, and I will yield to any of my colleagues who will join me in condemning it. I will yield to any colleague who will condemn the suggestion by Marjorie Taylor Greene that the FBI was out to assassinate former President Trump. Please condemn it, because if you don't, you are encouraging it, and you're co-signing it. Mr. McClintock, please.
Of course we do. What a ridiculous question.
What a ridiculous statement that she made.
I agree with you, and I
Thank
don't
you.
think there's anyone here who agrees with you.
Thank you.
It is ridiculous. I didn't
Both
even know
sides
that.
have a lunatic fringe in their movement, ours and
Yes.
yours. And frankly, I find yours far more frightening. Because
I've never
it leads
heard
to
somebody
ridiculous
suggest that we were trying to that the FBI was trying to assassinate a former president. I do appreciate, Mr. McClintock, you condemning. I would welcome anyone else who would condemn that. and we'll make this clearer when
But
the
I
Attorney
would
General
also, however,
testifies.
condemn the instructions
And
to use
reclaiming my
lethal
time,
force
reclaiming my
in
time,
such an operation or
reclaiming my time,
conducting such an
Director,
operation at all.
reclaiming my time.
Reclaiming my
Director,
time.
The former president stated last week at an NRA convention that every single Biden attack on gun owners and manufacturers will be terminated on my first week in office, perhaps my first day. I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. What does this mean for parents in America as it relates to whether our kids are going to be sheltering in place and hiding under their desks for the rest of their time at
Let's
school?
start some
if
new
this was to
shit
happen?
Congressman,
that I haven't done.
Can't and won't get involved in electoral politics. What I said in my opening statement, though, I think hopefully people from all sides of questions can agree on, which is we see progress being made. We see violent crime going down. We have a strategy that appears to be working. My hope is that we can all come together, and maybe there's policy disagreements on different things. We can all come together, though, on the fact that we are driving down violent crime all over this country and double down on the strategies that are working. That's my hope. The things that are working, let's stick with, because the numbers show that real lives are being saved.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is violent crime going down?
Excuse me?
Is violent crime going down?
According to the data I've seen, violent crime is going down, yes.
That's not what Director Ray told us a number of months ago when he was here before us.
What I've seen in recent numbers, violent crime is going down. There's in the 175 cities covered by the major city chiefs, there is double-digit reductions in violent crime. I was in Baltimore at the turn of the year, 90% reduction in homicides. LA, 13%.
When we had a hearing up in New York City just about a year ago, we heard from city councilors and others that they said that the police are not charging crime now because a district attorney would not prosecute that crime. Here, let me give you an example from a city in our state. There was a statement from the district attorney in Milwaukee County.
Try it
a number
out.
of years ago, but he still continues to be the district attorney. Is there going to be an individual I divert or I put into a treatment program who's going to go out and kill somebody? You bet. This is the same guy that led off the Waukesha Christmas killer who drove a vehicle through, killing 6 people just a couple years ago in a Christmas parade up in Wisconsin. Are you sure violent crime's going down?
I believe the numbers bear out that violent crime is going down. I think last year saw the most precipitous drop in violent crime.
You cited Minneapolis here in your testimony, whether it's indicting 45 Minneapolis gang members involved in murder and drug trafficking. We just had they have a district attorney in Minneapolis also that does not prosecute crime. She'll go after cops, as she's doing right now with a cop who was doing his job, and she's going after him now. Are you sure those indicted 45 Minneapolis gang members
See how
are
this
actually
goes.
going to be charged with a crime?
I was there to
Sure of
announce
that?
the indictment myself, along with the U.S. Attorney, along with the Chief of Police, along with the Sheriff. They're already
okay,
indicted,
that does the
and I
same
hope they go to
thing.
jail for a long time.
And I think you said that there's more activity with the cartels. You commented about this Sinaloa cartel. Is there more activity going on down by the southern border?
What we see is the flow of firearms. Our job is, right, to stop firearms trafficking, which goes from the United States to Mexico. And we have seen an increase in our number of seizures. Now, that increase could be due to the fact that we're spending a lot of time and resources trying to stop that. But yes, we see a continuing problem.
Yeah, Director Ray would echo that a number of months ago, or I should say you're echoing what he said. He said, we are seeing a significant increase going on related to the southern border. So you would basically agree with his comment, his general comment in regards to that?
Yeah, with southbound traffic, it is a continuing threat.
You think the open border contributes to this?
So I am not in charge of the agency that controls the border, but with respect to southbound traffic, that's things going.
So have you shared that with the Attorney General?
Well, I think everybody Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Have you shared it with the Department of Homeland Security.
We work together on all of these task forces with the Department of Homeland Security, these southbound task forces. They have agents and officers sitting with us doing that interdiction for southbound firearms trafficking.
So they know this problem is getting worse.
Well, they're part of the fact of why the seizures are up, that we're interdicting more weapons than ever, double-digit increases last year in terms of southbound seizures.
So, Mr. Chairman, besides human trafficking, besides the terrorists that are coming across the border, we see another example here where the open southern border is making it potentially more deadly for Americans. We see these guns that are continuing to flow both ways across the border. And plus you have a border patrol that can no longer do their job as babysitters.
It is very rare. I'm sorry.
I'm going to close up here.
Sure.
If you have a...
God damn it.
What would be your recommendation if somebody lied on their 4473 form? They dumped their pistol in a garbage can and it was in a school zone. What would be your recommendation for charging that person?
I think that echoes the fact of a publicly reported case. I'm not going to comment on a pending matter, and I think that question is aimed at that.
So it's an example of somebody that did something like that, and I'm sure it's happened before. What would you recommend they be charged with?
If a person out there intentionally lies on a 4473 form, they can be charged with the crime of lying on a 4473 form.
Dumped a pistol in a garbage can? So those are the facts of the case?
Again, I'm not going to comment on specific facts. If somebody lies on a 4473, I mean, that was part of the charges in the case that we discussed earlier, that was the subject of so much discussion. That's public, but not commenting on the specifics, that's a crime.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to close real quickly. The dual system of justice in America, Hunter Biden versus Brian Malinowski. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized.
Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry. Young lady from Vermont has unanimous consent.
Yes, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record Milwaukee sees decline in homicides in 2023.
God damn.
This
Come on, I
is,
can't get past
WPR.
nobody.
All right, without objection. Gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman. I also want to thank the gentlewoman from Vermont for providing this video.
Try not to drive like a dick.
Those who are watching it with some sense of or semblance of the actual facts on the ground with respect to the comments made by my colleague from Wisconsin. Director, I first want to say thank you for your service to our country. You've spent your career in law enforcement, obviously a former federal prosecutor. I'm grateful for the work that you and your agency does each and every day to keep communities across my district in Colorado, Rocky Mountain West, the entire country safe. You have more patience than I. I think it is awfully rich. I'm not asking you to opine on this or to respond, but it's awfully rich for some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to lecture you, who've spent your career in law enforcement leading one of the premier domestic law enforcement agencies now, to lecture you about crime and gun trafficking when they have worked vociferously over the last 17 months
God damn it.
to defund the very agency that you lead that is charged with addressing gun trafficking, it's charged with keeping us safe. I think it is shameful. How much did President Biden's fiscal year 24 budget request identify for the ATF? What was the total sum?
I believe that the number
Looks like it went up a couple spots.
that I'm very familiar with is the amount of the cut, which was $47.5 million, that was the real salary and expenses cut, which is causing us not to hire agents, was causing us not to be able to be out there with our state and local partners arresting carjackers and violent criminals. The request is 3 or 4 steps. It was a significant increase for ATF funding, and not only was the increase not granted, but ATF's budget was cut, and that's having these kinds of effects on our ability to fight violent crime that I'm talking about.
Well, you beat me to it, and thank you, Mr. Director, because I think you provided the requisite clarity. $47 million cut. $3 billion less than what the president ultimately requested. $1.9 billion was the president's request in terms of funding for the ATF. Ultimately, it's about
$1.6 billion, which meant in real dollars a $47 million cut.
Went from 1.675 to about 1.625.
Correct.
And by the way, that happened halfway through the year because Congress hadn't passed a budget, and so we had to effectuate the entire $47 million cut in 6 months, which was also, Congress delays in passing these measures. I understand they're difficult, but for people running organizations, and many of you have run businesses, that is very, very difficult to effectuate a whole cut after somebody is giving you the higher budget for half the year and says, make it all up in a half year.
Well, I'd like to hear any of my colleagues defend the propriety of pursuing that kind of cut to one of our nation's lead law enforcement agencies. The cognitive dissonance is astounding to me. I mean, I don't, I've listened for years to my colleagues on the other side claim that folks in our party don't support law enforcement, which of course couldn't be further from truth. And yet, simultaneously, they now pursue a significant cut to the operations of the ATF. I'm grateful, and by the way, Director, I mean, this is outside of your
which should be interesting.
But they just released a budget a month ago that proposes severe cuts to local law enforcement as well. Rural sheriffs, rural police departments in my district, COPS grant program, which I'm sure you're familiar with, given your time as a prosecutor years ago. A program that is integral to enabling local law enforcement to do their jobs, to hire more officers. I think it's shameful. I'm grateful for what, as I said, you are doing. I wish I had more time to be able to spend, or perhaps engage in a colloquy here around some of the regulations that the ATF has promulgated, which I support, to address some of the mass violence, mass shootings that we've tragically had in communities across the country, including in my community in Boulder, Colorado. But I would just say the sum of my remarks is that I'm grateful for the work that you do. I'm grateful for the work that the law enforcement officers in your agency do each and every day. And you certainly have our support. And I would hope that it be on a bipartisan basis. Hope springs eternal. We'll keep working towards that. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. What's your budget this year?
The budget, I believe, is $1.625 billion was the most recent budget that was passed.
Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized.
I thank the chairman. I'm troubled here by your new rule defining what a firearms dealer is or engaged in the business of selling firearms. Isn't the purpose of it, or won't the result be that more people will be defined as being engaged in the business of selling firearms?
The purpose of the rule is to effectuate Congress's definition. Congress expanded the definition 2 years ago in the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act.
What's the result going to be?
The result is going to be, I hope, increased compliance with Congress's statute.
The result is going to be subjecting more American citizens to the treatment that Mr. Malinowski unfortunately received from our federal government, which is you want to get more warrants to serve these no-knock raids on people who've not been convicted of anything, yet may be convicted on their doorstep to death. I want to address something in your rule here. I did find one thing that I think is sort of helpful, and I hope the other side of the aisle will read this. I want to give you time to look at this. The department, that would be the ATF, correct, in your rule?
I don't know what is this from the?
Yeah, this is from the rule.
The department refers to the Department of Justice.
Okay. The department also notes that the term gun show loophole is a misnomer in that there is no statutory exemption under the Gun Control Act for unlicensed persons to engage in the business of dealing in firearms at a gun show or at any other venue.
Oh, nice. Got your shit. Hell yeah, man.
The other side of the aisle. This is the one useful thing that I found in 16-page.
I'll pause that for a minute. Sweet. Got your computer. Hell yeah, man. Yeah, I'm just listening to this ATF hearing. Decided to stream it on here. While playing Grid, I was trying to play Forza Motorsport. That wasn't playing too well, but that's dope. Hopefully you start doing some streaming and shit soon, man. Play some games. I'll be down.
Rule and hundreds of pages of explanation is to show people that there is no gun show loophole. Do you agree with the department and with your own rule here?
I agree that Congress never said, and has never said, and hasn't said now, didn't say before this, that somebody who is engaged in the business, those are the words there, can do that without a license depending on where they sit. But people have encouraged the perception, and we have seen an increased level of non-compliance among people who are either intentionally or otherwise breaking Congress's statute.
Yeah, I just started learning how to stream better on here.
Is the left side of
using
the aisle in the media.
OBS,
There is no gun show
throwing
loophole,
in other
and
shit.
I'm glad you
and-
finally
yeah.
admitted that. Now I want to get to something else.
I've said that publicly, and there never was.
Okay, thank you. I want to get to something else in your opening statement. And maybe you want to read it back if it's written down. Can
Yeah,
you tell me
Cyberpunk
the
is pretty
fact
dope. I have
that you
it.
were
I didn't get as
expressing
much
or
into it as I
claimed that there
wished,
are more
but
that firearms are leading cause of death for children? What were your specific words in your testimony?
I'd have to look at my testimony. It's
Can you
in
look
here.
at
I
it
think it's
and-
children and youth, and it's in my longer statement that's in the record. Obviously, I'm summarizing a statement as the chair asked me to do. So it's in my longer statement, which has been entered into the record. I don't have it in front of me.
Can you define a child and youth?
There's child and youth. There's a statistical study that is the source of that, and we can
Nice.
get that to you. I don't know the specific site sitting here. We'll
Yeah.
be glad to get that to you.
Yeah, the statistical study.
yeah, you don't have. I was gonna
according
say
to,
if you ever
news
want to stream,
reports
I could help you out
and,
to do it and shit too. But
Snopes, as Mr.
yeah,
Nails
GTA 5, hell
referred
yeah, I'll
to,
play that with you. Project
excludes
Zomboid.
infants under
I haven't
the
ever
age of
played
1
that.
and includes 18 and 19-year-olds. Is that true?
I don't know. I mean, honestly,
You don't know your own statistic?
no,
Are
I
you
don't.
What do you
know.
think of this setup that I have
honestly,
going on?
Why
Isn't
would that
any
be your
killing of
testimony to
children
Congress?
unacceptable?
Any killing of any person is unacceptable, except in self-defense. Are you including if a 17 or 18 or 19-year-old gang member
Nope.
came to a person's door and tried to attack them, that would self-defense? Are you including that in your statistic?
Congressman.
Guess we'll see how
Firearms
bad I do at
violence
this one.
is a huge.
Yeah. No, I'm not
Ender
going
of
to
lives
let you
of
make your
children.
public service statement. I want you to defend your sworn testimony.
Thank you, sir.
Are you claiming that 18 and 19-year-olds are children in your statistic?
And again, you have my statement.
Yeah,
Congress-
I have it. I'm asking you to explain it. Here's my other question. How many 18-year-olds who've committed a
Yeah,
gun crime
Rich,
have you suggested be
the dude
prosecuted
we've been
as
working
minors?
with, has showed me a lot.
We are a law enforcement agency. We're not the prosecutors.
And I'm using my
In the
laptop.
federal system.
How many
the
have
federal,
you served? How many have
federal
for
system
the
gone
stream.
after?
Ooh.
Okay.
Federal. Respectfully,
18-year-olds.
we investigate crimes. Shoulder
Using
to
my
shoulder with
laptop
local law
for the
enforcement,
stream.
and if they
18-year-olds
are-
children or are they adults?
each state
Playing on
has
my
its
PC.
own- has its own
Under the gun
rules as
laws.
to when juveniles are prosecuted.
Federal gun laws.
laws, as you may know, federal laws with respect to the prosecution of juveniles are exceedingly difficult. And you are correct that prosecution
whenever-
of
'cause,
juveniles, if you're implying this as
Using them
adults, is rare
separately,
in
it
the federal
separates the
system.
load.
Here's
It's
the
a lot
reality.
easier to
juvenile
do.
crime
I can show you a lot of
is
shit.
an increasing
Third
problem.
laws, the gentleman from California.
Reclaiming my time.
So
Look,
now I
you're
stream at
including in your
1080.
statistic, whether you know it or not, 18 and 19-year-olds, but you would never claim that those are minors in the context of gun prosecutions. And the only way you can get the number of deaths attributable to firearms above other causes is by excluding under the age of 1 and including 18 and 19-year-olds, particularly gang members, and including self-defense. So with that, I yield back.
Someone yields back. The gentlelady from Pennsylvania recognized.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Dettelbach, thank you for being here. And thank you, and I believe about 5,000 of your members.
And I should
full-time
mention I'm
employees
using
of
a
ATF.
capture card.
Just to put
The
that
Elgato
number into some
HD60X.
perspective, there are more than 6,500
Hell yeah.
sworn police officers.
Yeah, I like doing
serving
it this way a
just
lot
in the city
better.
of
It's a lot
Philadelphia.
easier.
I
Ooh,
hope so. Would it be fair to call ATF a relatively small but mighty law enforcement agency, Director?
I'm gonna start game
Those
streaming
5,000
like
plus
this
people who are
sometimes on the
ATF are
channel.
Incredible people. They are doing a mammoth job with very few resources. It's a dangerous job. Every single day, it's a dangerous job for them out there because of the types of cases that we often see. and they're doing a great job at it.
I agree with you. As you note in your testimony, ATF is in fact the only federal law enforcement agency with the sole focus of working with police and partners in state and local law enforcement to protect Americans from violent crime, correct?
We are the federal
Yeah,
agency with the
that might
sole
be their
focus on
focus
violent
as written, but that ain't what the fuck they do.
To those of you in the room or who are watching on TV, if you're experiencing whiplash, I'm sure it is not lost on anyone in this room, anyone who cares about the issues around police and law
Oh yeah,
enforcement.
first.
We are just 1 week removed from National Police Week. I sat over on the regal Senate side as we honored the fallen police officers. It's whiplash in this hearing. 1 week we honor fallen
Let me
police
know if you
officers,
can even hear the
next we wanna
game on that
defund
side, or if I
law
should turn it
enforcement
off.
like you. From rooting out cartels,
As far as volume
fueling the
goes.
fentanyl crisis, to curbing gun violence, the #1 killer of American children, gun violence. That's what people on the other side of the aisle ought to be outraged about. The #1 killer of our children in this country, gun violence. And progress has been made, even though our Republican colleagues attempt to discredit and defund you. I want to turn to the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. I'm so proud that we were finally able to do something, some small things around gun violence. We are weeks away from the second anniversary of this great act, June 25th. I was heartened to see that last month, ATF finalized a rule implementing the landmark legislation. Part of the rule overlaps with my bill, the Fire Sale Loophole Closing Act, which would prevent FFLs who have had their licenses revoked or denied from selling old business inventory guns without background checks. Some Republican lawmakers have
some more
raised
new shit.
concern that the final rule goes too far. Could you tell us, why is this rule necessary? Why do we need to know what happens to those inventoried guns?
Yeah, I have it way
So,
low for a
again,
reason.
of
I
course,
didn't
as
know
you
if
know, the
people
rule
wanted to hear
is
it or
under
not.
litigation, so I'm limited to the public record.
Like mainly, I was having this going. For racing, I could probably have the game volume a little bit higher, so people can hear that as well. I'm kind of working out the little parts to see what people might like. I'll turn up the
And what I
game
can say,
volume.
the text of the rule speaks for itself and should be looked at, and also the explanation, the hundreds of pages of explanation and the
What do I
response
want
to
to buy
comments.
first?
With respect to that one part of the
And
law
I'll turn this up more
that Congress
too.
passed, and as part of the Gun Control Act, if a dealer who is a licensed firearms dealer loses their license, right? The notion that
They
that
all
somehow
rear
for the
wheel,
person
yeah.
who loses their license can then not follow the Gun Control Act, right, is inconsistent with the structure of the Gun Control Act in many cases.
inconceivable.
So the idea is that everybody's playing by the same set of rules. There are so many dealers and collectors who are following the law out there.
I'm going with
And
the Porsche.
part of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, part of our enforcement is to make sure that those who obey the law aren't being treated at a competitive disadvantage to people who are out there ignoring the law, right? It's only fair. There are so many people who are obeying the Gun Control Act, who are obeying the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, and those who are out there ignoring it, just from a plain old business perspective, we have to have.
Yeah, and there are plenty of people who are obeying the laws too that say you shouldn't be banning the shit that you want to ban and making all these laws outside of Congress. So, nah to that, motherfucker.
A fair marketplace where everybody obeys Congress's statutes.
I couldn't agree more. It's also common sense that if you've lost your license, you can't just get rid of your inventory without following.
Including background checks.
What challenges have you had, has ATF had, faced in implementing the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act? Litigation is clearly part of it, but what else?
I think when Congress gave us our new tools, which we're very grateful for, Congress didn't appropriate extra monies for us to enforce those particular new tools. We did get $1 million a year to work with the National Shooting Sports Foundation on the Don't Lie for the Other campaign, which is an important collaborative effort we have with
Let
the
me know if
industry.
that's too loud.
But the 500 cases, defendants that we charge under the new statutes with our prosecutors and our partners, right? That's taking away from other priorities that we also still want to service. So again, when we at ATF are choosing what to do, Congressman, we're choosing between very important things. We're choosing between body-worn cameras and cartels. We're choosing between gangs and carjackings. Those are very important things that we are trying to balance.
I couldn't agree more. I honor all of your agents. I have a unanimous request. Consent request, Mr. Chairman. Number one, you spoke about fallen ATF officers.
Whoa.
And what I would
Getting
like
squirrely.
to enter into the record is a listing, multiple page listing, of fallen ATF officers, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosive fallen agents.
No objection.
I also have a unanimous consent request to enter this article from March of this year, ABC News. U.S. stats show violent crime dramatically falling. And I'd like to also enter into the record an article around a child in Philadelphia just last month, a 3-year-old child, sadly picked up a firearm and died.
Objection. Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank the director. The director knows I was a prosecutor under Project Safe Neighborhoods in the U.S. Attorney's Office. Worked closely with ATF, Dallas-Fort Worth Metro. I share your sentiment about the patriotic Americans serving in ATF trying to stop violent criminals from moving drugs and using firearms against the law in ways that are undermining the safety and security of the American people. And I want to thank
Damn it, man.
those men and women for what they do every day in that service. But would the director agree that there have been times where ATF have not gotten it right? I realize that with respect to the case we've already discussed with respect to Mr. Malinowski, that you're saying that's an investigation, but what about something like Fast and Furious?
Of course, like any agency, there are times where we don't get things right and can improve.
So a couple of questions for you, along these lines. I think it's really important for the American people to understand. Do you, as the director of ATF, do you believe that the American people have a constitutional right, an individual right, to keep and bear arms?
The Supreme Court has made it clear.
Hell yeah, man. Rock the
yes.
fuck out of that PC, bro.
The Second Amendment has been interpreted numerous times by the Supreme Court, just as you. There's more to it, but yes, what you have said, yes.
Okay, and so, but you believe that. You interpret the Constitution that
That's
way.
why now I'm going to be streaming like crazy and playing
all the laws
games.
the way that the Supreme
Now that I have the shit set up good and it's streaming really good, the quality's good, I'm going to be using the fuck out of this.
Court says they're to be interpreted. And when the Supreme Court speaks on something...
Would you have said that about Plessy?
Congressman, I work for a law enforcement agency. I'm not a judge.
But I'm just
accept
asking
the
you,
rulings of the court, including that one.
Word.
I'm not dodging your question.
Do you, as the director of ATF, believe there is an individual constitutional right to bear arms?
Yes, there is one. The Supreme Court has said it.
Along those lines, do you, as the director of ATF, believe that the federal government should maintain a registry or otherwise track, catalog, keep records of the transactions of firearms conducted by the American people, such that you would know what firearms I possess?
Congress has explicitly forbidden ATF from keeping a registry, and we do not. Again, we obey the law. We don't make the law, we obey it.
Do you, as the director, believe that the federal government...
Doesn't the ATF have a fucking ton of records that they shouldn't have?
...should track ownership of firearms among the American people?
Congressman, we follow the law as you put it, as you pass it. You have said we cannot have a registry. We follow that provision and will continue to as long as it's the law.
As the director of ATF, do you have a position on that? Should we track ownership of firearms?
As director of ATF, my position is it's in the law. We follow it.
If
Bullshit.
I want to sell a gun that I currently own,
My position is you're a fucking liar.
do I need a license?
So, getting into the specifics of the rule, which is in litigation. So
And
first
this
of all,
ought to be a really simple question.
I understand. Well, so you look at the totality of the circumstances. If we're talking about an isolated sale from somebody who is not engaged in the business of dealing firearms, you don't need a license.
So
Let me know
if
how
I-
that game
I
volume
insist
is now
This country, I live in Texas. I have a weapon and I want to sell it to a fellow
with
Texan.
how this stream is.
On an isolated basis, do I need a license?
Again, if you are not engaged in the business of selling firearms, those are Congress's words.
If I post a sale for a firearm last year, okay, and I do that on some relevant website like TexasGunTrader.com, and I sell that weapon, I sell it for $500. Then I inherit a gun from my dad, my uncle. And I inherited it last month, and it's like 6 months later, and I sell it. And I sell it for another
Sweet.
profit. I sell it for $500. And then less than a year later, I have another weapon that I inherit or I've gotten, I decide I don't need anymore, and I sell it. Is that engaging in the business? Is that engaging in activity that means I need a license?
I think pursuant to the clear language of Congress in doing this and to the things we've said in the rule, we've specifically mentioned inheritance as one of the things that is not indicative
Damn
of
it.
engaging in the
Got
business.
squirrely.
What if I have just 12, what if I have 12, 15, or 20 weapons and I sell 3 over the course of a year?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I'm just saying, if I have about 15, let's assume I had 15 or 20 weapons and I wanted to sell 3 over the course of a year.
I think what
I'd like to make money on it.
My reaction to what you're saying is that you look at it's very clear that you look at the totality of the circumstances. We can go through an endless series of hypotheticals. Hypotheticals aren't the way we
Do you
address
understand,
cases.
and I realize them over my time, do you understand why the average citizen sitting out there saying I've got 400 pages of rulemaking might not understand what they are allowed to do under the law when the director of the ATF can't look at a member of Congress and tell me yes or no emphatically whether or not if I sell a weapon or 2 weapons or 3 weapons or 5, whether or not I need a license?
Respectfully,
You think that's the way the law ought to be, or the rules?
Respectfully, I believe that the rule that we have promulgated provides way more information and clarity
In 400 pages?
than just the
If
one or
we
two
have 400
sentences
fucking pages,
Congress
really?
provide- And we were seeing
You can't
massive
even answer it.
non-compliance.
How can the average American know it?
We are in the business of knowing, and we would look at the whole case, and we would determine based on the. I'm sorry.
Young lady from North Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director Dettelbach, for being here the second time in over a year and for your commitment to keeping our communities safe. As requested by the Department of Justice, the ATF recently reported that over a 5-year period from 2017 to 2021, 68,000 illegally trafficked firearms
Stayed in
were
10.
distributed
Whatever. It's good
across the
enough.
United States by unlicensed dealers. The Iron
Hey,
Pipeline, which
Burnout.
we've
Oh, yeah.
discussed earlier, specifically refers to
I miss
guns
Need for Speed
smuggled
Underground.
up the I-95 corridor from the southern states to the Mid-Atlantic and New England. It runs directly through my home state of North Carolina, which is one of the
Yeah, I threw this game on Grid because it's just a good, solid, fun racing game. I was gonna play Forza Motorsport. I like that, but there's like an update now. I have to take it off my hard disk drive and put it on my solid state drive. So I have to transfer that shit. So whatever. I just wanted to play a fun racing game to listen to this ATF oversight thing for a while. I have tomorrow off work, so I'm doing a late night stream and just chilling, kind of having fun, playing some mindless shit while listening to this. I've always liked this game, though. There's not much you do to the cars, but all the cars are kind of cool. The races are pretty hard. You get a 300ZX in this game, which is dope.
top destinations for gun traffickers. Now, we wouldn't know this information, which directly impacts public safety in my state, without the ATF's dedicated work to make data available to the public
Solid
and
state?
to all of
Yeah.
our law enforcement agencies. This data is a critical tool for local law enforcement to address gun trafficking. I also want to highlight the implementation of the
I actually should have put on that
which,
Dirt
as
Rally
we've heard,
2.0. I
is
love
one
that
of the
game
most
because it's so
significant
hard.
steps Congress has taken to reduce gun violence in decades, giving law enforcement and prosecutors new means to hold gun traffickers accountable.
Yeah, I'm a huge.
I also want
You're
to
like
note
me,
that
huge racing
both
fan.
of North Carolina's Republican
But it's gotta be a
senators
good game.
voted for the bipartisan Safer Communities Act in the last Congress. Building off this legislation is imperative. And it
This
will
is
take
one of my favorites
continued
personally.
bipartisan
I think this is the
consensus to
2019,
do so.
the first grid.
We've talked a little bit about the gun trafficking provisions in the Safer Communities Act, but I want to broaden that a little bit and
Fuck it,
ask
let's do
you
this.
how gun trafficking intersects with drug trafficking, particularly fentanyl trafficking, and what ATF is doing to reduce not just gun trafficking and gun violence, but the menace of fentanyl and other dangerous drugs.
I've been involved with prosecution since 1991, and one thing that has stayed the same.
It's not bad. You have to
unfortunately, I'm
like
sure will stay
a.
the same is that guns and drugs.
You kind of have to like the cumbersome of it, cumbersomeness, because there's not a whole lot to it besides like livery and just learning the tracks and having fun with it and learning to use different cars, because the main thing is different power versus weight versus four-wheel drive versus rear wheel. So you just kind of work with that. It's a fun game though. I like it quite a bit.
Illicit guns and drugs go together. Gangs,
Which
cartels,
I'm about to get this four-wheel drive.
individual dealers. They are armed often as a means of enforcing their business practices, their unlawful
And I figure I'm doing some shit that I haven't really done on seasons that I've had and just haven't done them. So fuck it, some new stuff.
criminal conduct and punishing individuals who challenge them, intimidating witnesses, you name it. So these things go together. With respect to fentanyl, that is also, it was true with crack, it's true with powder cocaine, true with heroin, it's true with opioids.
Oops.
It's true with fentanyl. And we worked alone and together with our partners on cases that involve narcotics trafficking all the time for that reason. Armed drug trafficking organizations are part of what ATF does. Just earlier this month, ATF made a case that resulted in members of the Sinaloa cartel going to jail for literally decades, I think one for life. We are routinely seeing fentanyl dealers and organizations that are armed to the teeth and that are threatening people's lives.
Well,
And
see how
so
this goes.
do you believe that the more we support efforts to stop gun trafficking, that will also help in our efforts to stop drug trafficking?
I know it.
I'm going to ask you a fun question
Yeah.
since I know it's been kind of a rough day.
I feel the difference in the car, definitely.
If it was Christmas and you could be fully funded in the ways that you've requested, what would be your top 3 priorities and how would that make our community safe?
This is Christmas. Can I get an extra one or 2?
Absolutely. You
Okay,
have
look,
36 seconds.
We're the violent crime agency, so I think what I would start with is we know a strategy that's working. The crime gun intelligence strategy working with state and local law enforcement is working. We have to scale it, right? So we have 60 crime gun intelligence centers or so. We put out, I think, an extra 10 in the last year. I would put out crime gun intelligence centers. I would try to stand them up in numerous other places. Second would be to support them, we need better intel. Crime gun intelligence is driven by a couple things: the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network, or NIBIN, and crime gun tracing. I would continue and ramp up our campaign to get sheriffs, to get chiefs, to get law enforcement officers all around the country to fully participate in the NIBIN and tracing
The NIBIN.
free tools that we provide them. And I think, gosh, it's so hard. On the third, I would say, I think, I would double and triple down on our RICO Vicar gang strategy. It's a very effective legal tool that puts into effect the crime gun intelligence. Minneapolis case is a great example.
Oh, I
So
fucked up.
They have 15, 20 shootings all around town. They look totally unconnected. Through the crime gun intelligence tools we provide, we're able to
Yeah, the
connect
break,
them,
the
show that
it's
the
different
highs.
breaking on corners and shit
One
with this
group
four-wheel drive.
responsible for all of this.
The other
And
one
so
was
then
rear
we put
wheel.
together a RICO
I got to
case,
get used to four-wheel.
which has extra teeth. We make sure we're taking down the whole organization.
I like the
think that would
handling
be
on this game, though. I can't lie.
Thank you for your service, and I think it's interesting too that the director didn't mention body cameras, even though he told us we weren't wearing those because of budget cuts. But that didn't make his Christmas list. And the time is now. The gentleman's from.
I did ask for extra commission stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the Malinowski killing, did you say you're deferring to and waiting for this investigation from the Arkansas State Police?
The Arkansas State Police has referred the matter to the district attorney's office.
I could be doing a hell of a lot better.
You've been deferring until that to take any action.
I haven't played in so long.
That would be our normal course of action. If there's a pending criminal investigation, in order to make sure that we preserve the integrity of that investigation, we let it proceed. Yes.
So that's a criminal investigation, huh?
They'll decide the scope. My understanding is they're investigating to see.
That's a criminal investigation. Let's stay on my question. That's a criminal investigation.
It's an investigation to see whether Arkansas law was violated.
That's called a criminal investigation, right? They're a criminal law enforcement agency.
I'm going to try to do a lot better like that. Well, it's already the end. At least I was showing up that time at the end.
The Arkansas State Police, in their press release on April 24, 22, said, "We do not have the authority to address methods and tactics used or whether agency protocols and policies were followed." Have you seen that?
I've seen the press release that they have.
That?
Correct.
So you're deferring action on...
It'll actually be nice getting back in the racing game some more. I love Forza Horizon 5, too. That game's the fucking shit. But I need to do that switch on my hard drive with Forza Motorsport. Start playing that some more. This is online as well, so if you're interested in this game, look it up. Some of the racing games and other shit, I'd be down to play with you.
On questions of methods and tactics until you see what Arkansas does with the criminal investigation?
I'm on Steam, obviously.
That is the normal standard thing that we do, because if you start interviewing witnesses, if you start talking to people in the middle of a criminal investigation, very quickly people start talking about the fact that the integrity of that investigation.
Mr. Dettelbach,
it's very important to respect the ongoing investigation.
Mr. Dettelbach, in the Breonna Taylor, did you watch yesterday's hearing by any chance?
I did not have a chance to watch all of yesterday's hearing. I watched.
Did you watch some of it?
I watched some of it.
Well, in the Louisville situation with Breonna Taylor, the Metropolitan Police Department there fired its first officer within 90 days of the incident. They were doing that as a matter of their management responsibility. By the way, the Justice Department, of which your agency is a component, has conducted a pattern and practice investigation and is pursuing enforcement action against the Louisville Police Department. What is your excuse for not taking managerial action about the appropriateness of the tactics used in the Malinowski killing?
I think you would agree with me that police officers and agents are entitled to due process just like everybody else.
There's no doubt about that. That doesn't answer my question. Don't you have management responsibility with respect to the way the agency is conducting such matters?
Brakes on this are way better than the last car.
Based upon the review, and I don't expect it to be a lengthy period of time, we would conduct use of force review as we do in every matter like this that occurs, and we will do that in this case as we do in every matter.
What's soon enough? They acted in Louisville within 3 months. What's soon enough?
Respectfully, we'll see that the investigation will end, and then we will commence our internal review, as we always do.
Concerning body cams, you testified that the rollout within ATF was incomplete. Is it your testimony that the rollout has not extended to ATF personnel in Arkansas, and that's the reason they didn't have body cams?
The field division that covers Arkansas has not yet been implemented. That's correct.
Okay. And you said, what did you say the cost was of your item there? Something in the tens of millions. Was it 40 million, 45 million?
This isn't the downstream cost, because there's huge data costs, as you know, with this. But the initial implementation
Savior Batman.
The request in the budget is $37.5 million.
37 million. So I understand your budget is 1.7. Well, your budget's about 1.7 billion. So if my calculator's right, that's about 2.6% of your budget. You couldn't find 2.6% of your budget to catch up with common practice among also resource-constrained city police departments all over the country?
Respectfully, our budget is not 1.7, it's 1.625.
Whatever.
And the reason I know that is because that $45
Respectfully,
million
it's
cut has resulted in not being
1.625.
able to hire agents.
Yeah, but you're talking about something else. I'm talking about body cams that are in common use among metropolitan police departments across this country. And you're saying something that involves 2 or 3% of your budget prevented you from getting it done?
I'm saying that we're in the process, as we said from the beginning,
Numero
of implementing
uno.
the policy in phases.
One mo.
We continue.
Mr. Director, let me ask you this question. I understand there could be justifications for lots of things about putting tape on, jamming signals, things like that in a certain set of circumstances. What can possibly justify deferring, as that video showed, deferring the execution of that search warrant until the person who justifies the use of such tactics, if there's a question of a risk of violence, was present in the home?
These are career law enforcement agents.
I didn't ask that.
And they make determinations.
I asked you what could possibly
I asked
justify
you.
that.
In my experience, when an agent decides, when a cop decides to go through a door, when a cop decides to execute an operation, they are entitled, if they're correct, the warrant
Right,
allowed that warrant to be executed on the day it was executed. We'll see what the investigation says, but Congressman, armchair quarterbacking police officers who are risking their lives without evidence yet is not the way to go here.
That's about 5,000 words and not one justification uttered. Not one possible justification. My time has expired.
He's like, that was a real fucking word salad, and I heard nothing.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Maryland is right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Director. Good to see you again. I just want to run through a few things, some which strike me as surprising, and some are just hypocritical. And I'll ask you some questions at the end, but I did want to deal with a couple of these at the top. The comparison to the Breonna Taylor case struck me as quite surprising. You know, Breonna Taylor was a scenario where no shots were fired at the officers. I think one of the officers actually made a false statement. Well, Breonna Taylor certainly didn't fire any shots at any of the officers. There was the officer who was fired.
This guy
lied in the affidavit. I think that was found pretty quickly. But in any event, you know, the no-knock issue I think is a pretty significant one. And I believe that what's going to happen later today is that there will be a bill offered the George Floyd Criminal Justice Act that will help to address one of these issues. So I hear a lot of concern from my Republican colleagues about the no-knock warrant being executed here.
Oh, nice.
It's pretty routine.
Yeah,
this warrant was executed, but hopefully you all will be willing to support that provision when it's offered today. Mr. Director, did you want to
went over to that other
I
side.
just wanted to say that, I just wanted to repeat again that because this is an ongoing investigation, I'm not commenting. There are numerous different things that I believe.
Oh, okay, there we go. Now pause it over there. Yeah, I went to Michigan too, actually, the other day. Went to Canna Vista, got a couple of ounces, 2 for $1.50. So I'll probably be taking a break here, actually, in just a minute to go partake. I might as well actually do that now. I'm gonna put on this break video, but yeah, support your local dispensary if you're into that thing. I'll be right back. All right, and I'm back. Anyone that was just watching and saw static in the mic now. I had it muted. It could be from that video also. Hopefully this mic isn't going all staticky. It might be, who knows. But me and Rich, we're having this going now, the Stupids Play. We have a YouTube and a Rumble where we're going to be streaming some games and talking about shit that's going to be going on. He'll be on the other side. We have it all worked out through like Discord and OBS and shit like that. And with that break video, I'll work on some of the sound with that later. But yeah, just to let everyone know, the Stupids Play, that's going to be on Saturdays also, is when we do it. We might stream on a couple other platforms at the beginning, like my Stabbing Like OJ YouTube and stuff, just to get it out there a little bit more. But yeah, look for that. Back to the main game time. Hopefully I can do a little bit better in my racing. We'll see.
That are out there that may not be shown to be the facts when the investigation happens. So I would just hope that we could all agree to wait till the facts come out and assess those facts.
We did one episode yesterday. The Stupids Play on YouTube, and then I did it on my Stabbing Like OJ YouTube. You could watch, like, we have two different perspectives, so we're going to kind of keep it that way, which I do like. It's going to be one person set up on Rumble and one person set up on YouTube, so it's going to be a little bit different on both, on whatever platform you are streaming on. We want to do a little bit more, but it's hard to do what we want to do, like being able to stream each other's game. Once somebody dies, then flip to their game. It takes a lot of bandwidth and shit. It didn't really work out the first time we tried to do it. Everything was going full retard, if you will.
Because I hear things that may well not even be correct as a factual matter, as things that members are talking about. So that's one of my hopes here today, is just to try and get the facts out.
Well, that's a fair point. But I'll say this. I know that an officer was shot in the execution. I don't have time. I'm sorry. In the execution of the Malinowski warrant. How was that officer?
Let's try the Ford.
Thank you for asking. My understanding is that he's recovering. And I can take a lot, and I understand that. But one thing I want to say is, at one point during, people are heated. Somebody said something about somebody got shot in the toe. When a police officer or an agent is shot at,
somebody got shot in the toe.
When a police officer or an agent is actually shot, it's a serious matter. And I know that nobody here would try to minimize an officer being shot as not being a serious matter. I just want to make sure. I understand people are heated. Maybe I got a little heated just now, but that's one thing that I just want to make sure that I know we all agree on.
I appreciate that. And also the funding issue, which Mr. Naguse addressed.
Oh, I did it again.
With respect to paying for body cameras, I know it was a very expensive.
Stupid.
We did it in Prince George's County, and it was one of the barriers to getting it done as quickly as we wanted. But I hope that's another one of those from my Republican colleagues, since you expressed.
Now here's a rear-wheel drive car.
And concern about
a lot easier to take corners. Crazy.
I hope you'll be willing to step up now and provide the additional funding in the ATF budget so they can move forward with that expeditiously. I also wanted to say this too. We had another debate a few minutes ago about whether firearms are the leading cause of death for children, and the issue, I guess, was you count infants or 18 or 19-year-olds or whatever. I just want to reiterate, that's not the first time we've done that one. And my view then and now is that I think it's a ridiculous point to focus on from the standpoint of
I'm gonna drive like a dick now. Sorry.
Isn't that enough? I mean, why should we be okay with it? Let's say it's the second leading cause of death, if you include infants or something. Why would that be okay? Why wouldn't we be concerned and want to try and find ways to bring those numbers down? So, you know, I appreciate the work that you're doing on that front and support the effort. But, you know, we have to find ways to protect our kids from these kinds of violence incidents. And with respect to the search warrant affidavit, I wanted to offer that in the record. I ask unanimous consent that that be offered.
No objection.
And also the search warrant return. I want to make sure that's
No objection.
so it's clear what was, in addition to an officer being shot, which did not happen in the Breonna Taylor case. You know, the weapons that were recovered, but also the other types of conduct that supported the probable cause finding by the judge in that case and supported the entry. And then the last point I wanted to make too, you know, the execution of a search warrant while the people were in the house in the morning, my experience was that was kind of standard operating procedure. It's actually unusual to do it any other way. And the reason for that is it's safer for the officers to try and catch them by surprise, and also leads to greater opportunities to seize weapons.
Fuck it up.
In this case, there were many, and because they thought there were 150 weapons in the house, certainly security and protection for the officers would be a prime consideration. With that, I yield.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman.
Thank you. Dr. Dittelbach, I wanted to follow up on the something that Representative Massey was asking about January 6th pipe bomb investigations. It's over 3
Come on,
years
I could get these
since
two.
it happened. What are you still investigating?
We are not the lead investigative agency. It's the FBI. My understanding is from public reported there's been over 1,000
Come on.
interviews conducted.
God damn it.
They're investigating the incident.
But it seems like it's like you have a roadmap and FBI not to answer questions. Everyone came here and every question we ask, everything under investigation. It's very clever. You guys brilliant not to answer Congress because everything under investigation, and then when investigation ends, statute of limitation and over, no one gets punished and you continue with this. And this has happened all the time. It seems like your agency should do better than that, investigate something over 3 years. It seems like you should get to some conclusion. But my question is related to these changes under your rule and definition, you know, what is engage in business rule. You know, do you think criminals that want to do something criminal are going to read your 500 pages of definitions? Are they going to read your 500 pages of definition explanations?
I think that, I don't know who will read it, but
Or
I
do you think
that,
criminals will be doing that?
I think that it will also encourage, as I said at the beginning, hopefully increase compliance with the law among people who
So you understand that criminals are not going to be reading this, okay? But what is it going to do to law-abiding citizen like Brian Malinowski that potentially was just doing, you know, selling these guns, and I don't know the whole circumstances, but he's dead because he was not probably realizing what you were doing in changes of this rule. So my question is for you is going to be, do you understand how dangerous your definitions have become?
Respectfully, our definitions are based upon the law that Congress passed, and it is based upon our observation and experience in the field.
Interpretation. So let's just go to your definitions. As a normal American, I understand your definition.
Implementation. It's implementing Congress's law.
Okay, how are you going to implement? I want to understand. I am a gun owner, and I'm going to decide occasionally, say, guys, occasionally I can do maybe 100 times, maybe 5 times. You know what? I am not engaged predominantly a profit. You know, that I don't even have time to do a profit. So at which point, as a regular American citizen, so I understand that you are not going to show up, cut off my electricity, show up to my house, and try to storm the house with a bunch of people that you don't even realize what's going on. So I can be in a situation like a lot of other Americans that not even realize that now you're redefining who the dealer is. So I want to get understanding. Summarize me understanding how I can explain to my constituent what it means now and how I am predominantly earn a profit in this. What is really definition of that?
The statute
Sorry,
that
I'm
Congress
doing this.
passed says that if you're engaged in the business of dealing firearms, quote, predominantly for profit, right, that requires a license. There are some exceptions then that Congress has passed, and respectfully, people may not read the statutes either. They should, though, if they're selling firearms. These aren't possessors. These are people who are reselling firearms repetitively for profit. And I don't think it's too much to ask for somebody who is selling firearms repetitively for profit.
What is repetitive?
Read the law.
What is occasional repetitive? If I decide, I have lots of guns, and I decided to, I want to replace with something else. I have 50 guns I'm going to sell this year. You can decide that I'm for profit. I don't know. Maybe they will be for profit. Definitely, no one, was going to sell it at a loss, right? And with
I like this
probably
chick.
The prices are keep increasing. So, I'm going to become a dealer now. I have to be registered in that.
Again, I've tried to explain, and
No, I'm trying to explain. So what do you do? What is really going to be now your new definition? Because it's so broad.
It's not a new definition. It implements Congress's definition. Congress changed
Yes, and you
definition.
put 500 pages of explanation. So can you summarize it normal, plain language, and American can understand?
I believe that our positions they're not secret. They're in
Yeah, but
court. They're
explain
filed.
without reading 500 pages that are confusing.
The rule seeks by providing
God damn it.
practical, conduct-based things that normal people could.
Yes,
for instance,
please explain.
One of the things that can result in people, depending on all the circumstances, is you take credit cards for payment. That could be one of the signs that somebody's in business. One of the things that
Look,
might
so
be
if
on
I
the
use
other
some little
side,
app and then I
one of
sell
the
a gun
things-
and take a credit card and potentially will be a dealer?
One of the things that might be on the other side is if you're occasionally dealing or gifting to family members, right? We try to say things on
My
both
time
sides.
has expired, but I'll tell you, you put American lives in danger and your ATF agent in danger by doing this, because you doing gun control. It is a very clever way to make everyone in dealer have a zero tolerance and exercise gun control and Second Amendment rights. But you put your people in danger and American people. I yield back.
Back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I like that chick.
Follow up on the discussions that we had on leading causes of death for children that have been spoken about by our colleague from Pennsylvania and also Mr. Ivey. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an article from April 2022 entitled Firearms were the leading cause of death in children in 2020. Researchers say also second one would be unanimous consent to enter into the record an article from October titled Firearms Now
Come on, I need the gain on. I keep breaking a little too early on some shit too.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director, for being here. I know it's been thank you for your time. So as I sit here, I'm really struck by what I feel we should be talking about here is that we have a fairly simple mandate from the American people, which is to do all we can to
Damn
stop
it.
gun violence. As my colleagues have said, we have this horrible situation in this country, parents, teachers having to see children being killed every day by gun violence. The country is awash in illegal firearms. We've heard that. We have accidental shootings by and of children. We have increasing suicide rates. And of course, mass shootings continue across our nation. And public poll after public poll tells us the same thing. People want us in Congress to do something, to take action. More than half of Americans consistently support stricter gun laws. Listening to some of my colleagues, you'd think that we were on a different planet. The majority is not even approaching or discussing new public protections or stricter gun laws. And the ATF doesn't have the resources to inspect firearms dealers as directed by Congress. Right now, over 2,000 firearms dealers have not undergone any inspection in over 10 years. There are laws already on the books to help us stem the tide of this violence, but they aren't being enforced because oftentimes Republicans won't give them the money to do so. Now, Director, I appreciate very much that you're here today. I'd like to talk a little bit more specifically about the work that ATF does. You got a big job. How does your agency carry out its mission with just over 5,000 employees?
It's very difficult.
Shockingly low. given
But the
the
way
charge.
look, the way we do it is we have an incredible workforce. I mean, the people the career people. I'm the only political appointee at ATF. Not a single Schedule C person, just me. The people who are the career people get the credit here. These are agents, these are investigators, lab technicians, analysts, staff. They do incredible, dangerous work every day. And the only way to make any progress on this is partnership with our state and local partners, which we're better than anybody else, respect others at. And number two, being smart about how we use the intelligence that we provide to identify the worst of the worst. To make sure that we are actually taking steps to do two things. Number one, identify the worst of the worst, the trigger pullers and the shooters, and get them out of the community where they belong, incarcerated. And also, at the same time, to do something to enforce the existing laws to cut off the supply of guns to those same people. It is far too easy for killers, felons, gang members, rapists, domestic violence people to get firearms, even though the law and everybody agrees they shouldn't have them. So you have to do both of those two things. It's a two-part strategy. And there are people who only want me to do one, and there are other people who only want me to do the other one. And the fact of the matter is, you're not going to make progress unless you have a reasonable approach on both.
So to follow up on that, how do you go about making those decisions about priorities? And are there functions that you unfortunately have to deprioritize due to the resource constraints that you have? And what are those?
So you make the fund decisions based on data. That's the data that you can find in real time. It's not always perfect. And there are areas of this country where I wish that we would have more agents. New York City is an example. So in New York City Police Department is 36,000 strong. I have about 30 people. It is absolutely, and we punch way above our weight. And that's the case everywhere. So we are making decisions about where the crime threat is. When I make an investment on the southwest border, as we have, not I, we at ATF, that means at ATF that we can't start up a whole new division. That means we're pulling agents from some other place that we really care about. So we are constantly struggling to balance resources in the best way we can to face a lot of threats.
Director, I'm just about out of time, but I think it's clear that without substantial funding, we are not going to improve our statistics on gun violence, and we're not going to improve our public safety outcomes. We should be putting the money to work to help protect our kids. I say that as a member of Congress. I also say that as a former teacher, and I'm a parent of 2 teenagers. We have to do something about this and not just talk about it. Thank you.
We're conflating two issues here. A man is dead and an officer was shot, not because the rank and file law enforcement did their job, but because somebody made a leadership decision in order to execute a warrant in the most dangerous way possible, given the circumstances of that case. We can sell 6 a.m. and standard operating procedure. We can do that everywhere else. I've represented 3 officers and officers involved shootings. I spent 10 years dealing with search warrants. I know the facts of this case. I know where the guy was.
Oh, God damn it. Go. Son of a bitch.
Implement a warrant in a way that absolutely maximizes the risk of harm both to the person being served the warrant on and to the officers serving it. But I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on to something else. Federal gun charges are what we call strict liability.
Go.
If you have a gun and you're a prohibited person, that's the crime. There doesn't need to be intent. There doesn't need to be any of those things, right?
Disagree.
So if you're a felon in possession of a firearm, you can say, I didn't know I was a felon.
No, but there's an intent requirement in Congress's statute. You can read 922G1. It's in the statute.
God damn it. Come on.
You said earlier that ATF's responsibility is to implement the laws that Congress passes.
Correct.
Yeah, then why do they keep making their own laws? Their own rules?
That rulemaking is based upon the
When
National
did Congress
Firearms
pass a law? When did
1934.
Congress pass a law? They didn't.
In 1934, Congress passed the National Firearms Act, which said that short-barrel rifles were unusually dangerous.
I'm not asking
Congress's
you
words.
about I'm not asking you
There
about
we go.
short-barrel rifles. I know what short-barrel rifles are qualified as national firearms.
Come on.
When did
Yeah.
Congress pass a law saying pistol braces qualify? When did Congress pass that?
Congress passed, they are covered by the national.
They did. When did the president sign it? He did. First pistol brace was sold in 2012. A guy walked into a gun store, bought it legally, walked out of the gun store. Pistol brace right. No need for $200. No need for a stamp.
You're saying if there's a new brand of gun that didn't exist in 1968, that the Gun Control Act doesn't apply to it?
I'm saying in 2012, a guy in Dickinson, North Dakota, walked into a firearms store and bought a gun legally, correct? With a pistol brace.
Come on, let's go.
Didn't need to do a $200. Didn't need to do a $200 registration.
Again, we look at, I think that
No, this is a factual question. The first pistol brace was sold in 2012. Did the person who purchased it need a stamp, and did he need the federal government's permission to buy that gun?
the 2000, respectfully, the 2012, the thing
Noise.
that has been talked about in this committee previously, was never brought to market.
Okay, so 2015.
It would depend upon the actual design of the individual item. There were numerous different items being manufactured.
You spent
it changed
20
over
years
time.
as a prosecutor. 20 years as a prosecutor. You know the answers to these questions. I'm done asking them. I'm just going to go with numbers. From 2012 until 2023, the ATF estimates that there are 3 to 7 million pistol braces sold on the civilian market, not requiring the $200 stamp from the NFA for a short-barreled rifle. Now, what Congressional Research Service says that
Don't you just love whenever the ATF is on the fucking chopping block about shit and they get all fucking bah, 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 bah.
there are 10 to 40 million of those things purchased in the same period of time. Manufacturer sales estimated are significantly higher than the ATF's estimate to include, and those estimates exclude 2020, 2021, and 2022. Now, the deputy chief of the ATF has stated that prior to June 1, 2023, 250,162 registrations on retroactive purchases were received by the ATF. That sounds accurate.
Okay.
I don't know who that person doesn't have a title like that. The number sounds like the number of people that during a certain period of time
Nice.
sought registration. The number does sound familiar, but I don't know the quote there.
So, if I got a rancher in southwest North Dakota who's hunting snow geese to a federal wildlife refuge, and a U.S. agent comes out, he purchased that rifle legally in 2015, and he's out shooting geese with a shotgun. U.S. Fish and Wildlife comes to his car and sees a gun in there with a pistol brace. What's the penalty for him now? He bought the gun legally.
Oh.
2015.
Well, again,
It's 5 to 10 years and a max of a $250,000 fine. You talk about costs, you talk about budget cuts. So let's just assume the low-end number of the ATF numbers on 3 to 7 million. 3 million guns that were purchased legally without any extra requirement. The ATF has gotten 255,000 of those registered. So you are roughly saying 2.7 million
All right.
people
A little
are now
newer and
felons in
faster.
possession
Try
of
some of
firearms,
this.
something they purchased legally.
I respectfully disagree with a lot of the characterizations in your question. The last administration, Attorney General Barr, issued guidance on this before ATF even got to this. People were on notice for years and years and years that you can't take something and break it into two and then put it together and treat it differently than the person who buys it in one piece.
They bought a gun legally, and you guys retroactively made it illegal in a different qualification.
Respectfully,
That's
I
exactly what
disagree.
happened.
That is not what the facts reflect.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentlelady from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to start by offering my condolences to Ms. Malinowski, who I believe was here earlier. St. Louis and I are here today seeking accountability for the gun violence epidemic in our country and for all instances of potential law enforcement misconduct. Director Dettelbach, thank you for being here today. Let me say that I support several of the ATF's recent efforts, including the Ghost Guns rule, the stabilizing brace rule, and the efforts to stop gun violence. But as gun violence continues to shatter families and communities, thanks in part to weak gun laws, states like mine, equitable and effective enforcement of our existing laws in respect to About the good old boys roundup. In the 1980s and 1990s, ATF agents organized shameful white events, which former ATF Director John McCall characterized as being racist in nature, anti-black, and having discrimination almost every year. It may seem like old history, but there are legitimate and recent concerns about racial bias in the agency's enforcement operations, specifically its use of sting operations. For example, the USA Today investigation from 2014 found that 91% arrested in ATF
Oh,
sting operations
goddamn.
were black or Latino. The inquiry was determined for office prosecuting these kinds of cases. Are you aware of these concerns on sting operations and any what's the sometimes looking at it, what you just said, looking at it and seeing that we do understand that folks marginalized communities are often criminalized or criminalized, period, is an issue that we must also so these questions are essential because in order for ATF to be effective today, it needs to fix the problems against it, including discrimination, racist behavior enforcement. But my concern about enforcement does not extend only to questions of racism. There needs to be accountability for all instances of potential misconduct by ATF agents. And that's why I do support my Republican colleagues' efforts to get more information from federal and local law enforcement about the death of Brian Malinowski. I know there is evidence that Mr. Malinowski fired first agents, but the circumstances want more information on what happened that day. But I say this one is my solidarity. I want to be clear. My solidarity, my pursuit for accountability, my pursuit of accountability are not conditional. But I will say that I have been surprised to hear my Republican colleagues expressing concern about law enforcement shooting, lack of body
There we go.
no knock warrants. I'm surprised because I and many of my Democratic colleagues have pushed for law enforcement accountability for years, and Republicans have mocked us and fought against us at every step. I'm surprised because 2023 set another record for law enforcement killings in this country. Police have killed an average of 3 people per day.
Oh, yeah.
Disproportionately kill black people, and there have only been
I mean, not to that, but to this game.
Yet Republicans have refused to hold hearings about any of those deaths. My question is, where have you been? Where have you been? Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, we've been protesting for 10 years. We have been protesting, we've been shot with rubber bullets, we've been dogs, we've had dogs unleashed. We have been hit with tear gas and rubber bullets. George Floyd, we're out there for 3 months. Mike Brown, we're out there for 400 days. Where were you? Why didn't you care then? Because they're black? I don't understand. All of a sudden now we want to talk. But see, the thing is this. When we took a knee, folks were mad and criticized us. When we were nonviolent, people still criticized us.
She lost her place.
All of a sudden now, the difference is color. But I say this, my solidarity is not conditional. So I ask them for the record that their solidarity is not conditional, that they are willing to support oversight and accountability for all deaths by law enforcement officers, regardless of race, ethnicity, faith, location, or anything else, that they will vote for real policy solutions that prevent police brutality and fund programs that keep our community safe, including gun violence. And yes, I went over that. I just want to hear that come from my Republican colleagues. We care about police brutality that affects every person.
Director, as you may know, I'm the co-lead alongside Congressman Stanley on the bill that 17
Second place. good.
Gun Control Act definition of a firearm, tasers. ATF provided some comments on an earlier draft of the bill, noting some concerns with the legislation. I'm sure you're aware of the bill. Does ATF still have the same concerns that we had on the earlier version?
I don't know. Look, Congressman, can I get back to you on that? I don't want to answer precipitously. I know this is an important issue for a lot of people, including some in law enforcement have expressed views on it. So can we get back to you on that? Because I don't know whether any changes in the bill have affected anything.
Okay, so then let me just bear with me then. I'll explain some of the arguments. Hopefully, as the director, your understanding of the Gun Control Act will be strong enough to provide some context. But the proposed definition of less than lethal device would be unworkable in the field, I think, is the issue. Yeah. Because officers and agents cannot measure the projectile velocity during field stops and searches and seizures.
As opposed to centrally, but you're talking about out in the field, I understand.
So, I mean, ATF doesn't currently test any of the firearm velocity in the field on any of the search and seizure stuff. Is that right or not?
To the best of my knowledge, that is correct. It's always hard because some of our operations aren't in Washington. We have operations that are not field operations but are centralized in other places. So I want to be careful. But we have, I think you're right as a general matter, yes. I'll check though and get back to you. If that's not correct, I'll get back to you.
Okay. So to be clear, ATF right now, though, the concerns that this change would be unworkable in the field hinges on the idea that officers and agents would suddenly need to start measuring velocity. And we're heading into the final round now. Right? But I'm trying to get to the bottom because I think Congress is way beyond ATF on this. I think there's a bipartisan group that certainly is starting to grow when it comes to this technology. And ATF still seems stuck where we were 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Okay, I understand. We will get.
I mean, obviously, you're getting the same feedback that we are, because this is happening. Law enforcement wants more.
There are exceptions in the current law for law enforcement, but I understand your concern, and we will get back to you, Congressman. I will commit to you that we will get back to you.
Okay, very good, very good. So, with the time that I have left, I just also wanted to submit for the record a letter from Mr. Earl Griffith, who served in the ATF for 20 years. Mr. Griffith's letter, dated March 6, 2024, is in support of the bill H.R. 3269, suggests that ATF already has the existing authority to revisit classification determinations if the manufacturer decides to modify a less lethal projectile device to lethal configuration. That's what the manufacturers are doing. I mean, they're changing the technology to kind of match up with what ATF was at. And I think that's unnecessary. I think this thing can be cleaned up. We would just have somebody pay attention to kind of what Congress is doing.
Congressman, my understanding is that the statutory language that is what is causing some of these classifications now. Obviously, and try to get back to your office.
Yeah, I'm just telling you, Congress is way ahead of where ATF is. And that's why I wish we would take a deeper kind of look at where we're at.
Damn it, I fucked up. So bad.
Seriously, if the statute is written, the changes are being made, so
Understand, are you disputing that the ATF was not in Little Rock, Arkansas, ready to execute a raid on March 12th?
I'm neither disputing.
We saw the video. Right?
A lot of again, this is a slippery slope. I have to abide by our Department of Justice policy.
ATF wasn't in Little Rock.
I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying
I fucked up again.
investigations.
Oh well.
Because I hear a lot of things flying out there.
You said earlier things were stated that were not facts. I think I've focused in the facts.
I wasn't focusing on
wanna just
that. There's been a lot of things that
Man. At least gain some. that language is in that language, I believe. I mean, this isn't litigation, our position, and the rule speaks for itself. But I believe you will find in black and white in the rule that language that you just, that in black and white in the rule, that language is there.
Yes, that language remains that exclusion remains unaltered by the DSCA. So these people who make occasional sales exchanges of personal purchases of firearms for a gift and personal collection of firearms, who sell all or part of their personal collection of firearms, are exempt from this 22 Act modification. And yet, we see
for those activities.
Right, those activities. Right, let's
they're
talk
doing a
about
whole
whether
bunch of other things.
Do you believe that personal collection of firearms can be for self-defense?
So I think, again, the provisions of the rules speak for itself. And in this format, it's hard to get into a deep debate on this. We also have filed significant legal papers in courts that are hearing this. And because it's pending litigation, nothing I say can or should contradict any of those things. The rule says
If I would have taken that correctly before, man. I've been doing so much better.
no action. Again, as in many criminal statutes and many regulatory, there is both and intent. Sometimes those things differ from statute and regulation to other statutes and regulations. The text of the law is always what controls.
Didn't change, and your efforts somehow determine intent based on no activity whatsoever or the gun owner.
Damn it. Come on.
Congressman, not even talking about this statute, but in many regulatory functions and many administrative proceedings, many civil proceedings, people's intent is part of the determination that finders of fact make. They look at their words. They look at various different things that they're doing, and they can infer intent. I think the standard jury instruction in many cases talks about these things.
Well, I just want to know when Congress authorized ATF to require Americans who offer to sell either one firearm to another family member to get a federal license, submit fingerprints, maintain gun registration paperwork, register as a business, and keep regular business hours open for ATF inspections.
Congressman,
they never did that.
Let me be clear. This is not, the rule cannot and is not and does not create a universal background check. We could not do that. Only Congress could do that, and I want to be very clear here that the rule does not do that.
I get what you're doing. ATF is playing too cute by half. The American people see it, we see it, and we're not going to allow you to do that. I yield.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Wyoming is recognized.
A December 2021 ATF memo alerted the American people that the ATF was maintaining a digital, searchable, centralized registry of guns and gun owners in violation of various federal prohibitions,
Exactly.
contrary to what you testified to under oath today. In response, Representative Michael Cloud and 52 House members sent the ATF a letter dated November 22nd, 2021. ATF responded to that letter stating that it had 920,664,765 records, 865,787 and 86,000 of which are in a digitalized format, which Gun Owners of America has proved to be searchable. This was discovered shortly after ATF was revealed to have processed over 54 million records in a single year. What is the latest record count for ATF's illegal digital searchable National Gun Registry?
0. We don't have. We obey the law.
According
we do
to
not.
your letter,
None of our
according to
records.
your letter, you have over 865 millions of these records are in digitalized format. You have admitted it.
Respectfully, we are. I think ATF is the only customer of Adobe Acrobat that
Well,
pays
let's
money
get
to
into that.
remove search function.
Before the
to
Commerce Justice Science Subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee in April of last year, you testified that ATF pays Adobe Acrobat Extra to have certain search functionality eliminated.
That's not correct.
Well, is ATF's digital database of gun owner records capable of being opened by normal Adobe Acrobat and searched by name?
Again, we
It's
pay.
a yes
we
or
pay,
no question. Is it?
We pay to have search function eliminated. We don't pay Adobe Acrobat, I believe.
If
We pay somebody else. But
if ATF asked, could Adobe Acrobat re-enable name search
ATF is
functionality
crooked
on
as fuck.
ATF's illegal gun registry?
it is not an illegal registry. We do not
If
search
ATF
by. We do not search by. Do not search in the method that you're suggesting, and we cannot. And these are records that are we pay a public safety cost, which Congress to balance with this decision.
If
which is
ATF asked, could Adobe Acrobat re-enable name search functionality on ATF's illegal gun registry?
I'm not an expert in Adobe Acrobat coding. I do know that we do not keep a gun registry. I also know that the.
You have admitted that you have over 920
Ooh.
million records, over 865 million of which are in digitalized format, correct?
The question, your answer is, are they somehow standards that you literally don't have to have? 950 million pieces of paper. That is a lot different from what you're implying with respect to having a gun registry. It is also true, Congressman,
Why?
that we don't have.
Why do you still have them?
Of firearms purchases for people who are still in business, which is the vast majority of currently sold firearms. We have 0.
You also testified before that subcommittee that ATF's digital database of gun and gun owners is not capable of being searched by personal identifier. In ATF's gun registry, be searched by name,
Jesus.
model, and serial number, enough searchability to create a list of, say, all AR-15 owners.
I am not good at this one.
Create, search around the registry.
You're not
Or if I
answering my
could,
question.
yeah,
Your
let's
question
restart.
Respectfully, it was a technical question with 5 or 6 different parts.
And
I'm
the
trying not to
registry
erroneously, as you said, I'm under oath, I'm trying not to erroneously misstate things of technical nature. We do not keep a registry. We use these things for pending homicide investigations. It takes us a lot longer to find the name of the killer.
Mr. Dettelbach,
Ooh,
you
oh.
mentioned gun running and gun violence associated with Mexican cartels and the crime associated with that.
Getting
In fact,
fucked up.
cartels is quote, the most dangerous organizations in the world. How many conversations have you had with President Biden or Secretary Mayorkas demanding that they close the subcommittee?
Approximately 0.
How many discussions have you had with President Biden or Mayorkas about closing the subcommittee?
The answer to your question is, we
work with DHS
How many
on
conversations have you
border-related.
had with them demanding that they close the southern border? It's a simple question.
Again, I have not. May I answer?
How many conversations have you had
We
demanding?
discuss our border-related security issues with DHS frequently. I have had conversations
demanded
with
that they
Secretary
close the
Mayorkas
southern
about our
border?
efforts.
Have you demanded that they close the southern border?
I'm an ATF. It is not our jurisdiction to police the southern border. That's for DHS.
You don't care about crime in this country if you're not trying to address what's going on with the southern border.
Respectfully, I deeply disagree. I think it's very unfair.
Thank you, Chairman. Director, here's my question. 2021, there were 5 licenses. 2023, that number
That's fucking crazy.
a very stark indicator of here's what's worse. An increasing number of firearm dealers faced with severe costs, often disproportionate consequences for minor critical errors, have elected to shut down
Son of a bitch.
rather than endure the extensive and costly process of defending the practices that so dangerous and accepted by the government wins because all the resources are there for small business insurmountable resources. Take a look at the number of voluntary business inspection. 2022, 69. This is a result of ATF's zero tolerance policy.
I'm just driving like a dick now.
Quite frankly, a very concerning trajectory of ATF. It's all occurring in the guise of public safety. But ATF is essentially working to dismantle a very lawful firearm industry. I see something in listeners talking about who we're going to find authorization some of these
Statute and the policy and our implementation deals with willful violations. And by the way, it limits them further, violations that endanger public safety. The vast majority, one thing I think we agree on, which I want to say because it's important, the vast majority of firearms licensees out there are following law and following rules. They're law-abiding businesses. That's why over 98, almost 99% of our inspections do not result in revocation. There's due process. People can request a hearing, and the hearings, Congressman, we conduct, these are administrative hearings at ATF. Half the time, we decide not to revoke because of something that the FFL presents to us. People have lawyers at some of those, they don't have lawyers at others. And in many cases, we work with FFL to try and cure any defects, if they're clerical defects, to make the FFL stronger in terms of target for people who, not the FFL's being doing something illegal, but others are taking advantage of weak controls. And that can be a public safety threat as well, as you know. Even law-abiding FFL, if they're not careful, can be taken advantage of by stock purchasers or actors. Here's my concern.
Really respectful of yours. The BSCA was passed based on that. May be sufficient to require licenses. And so you were inferring from that, and again, I think it's a minor Congress has made no there's a 2022 amendment, but I think you have largely another statute, 18 Are you familiar with that statute?
Came in
familiar with
fifth.
all the code, but I
What does that say?
respond.
Director, what does that say? What does that statute say?
I believe
What does that
it's
say?
the provision you're talking about for importers, which is the provision that you're referring to?
It says that the term engaged in business
Okay, so the
shall
engaged in-
not include a person that makes occasional sales, exchanges, or purchases of firearms for the enhancement of a personal collection or a hobby, or who sells all or part of their personal collection or firearms.
That's quoted in the rule.
Correct. The concern that I have, though, is that that's not the application by ATF. You're taking a very heavy-handed approach. And again, you have to look at the disproportionality of this, is that you have the heavy hand of government, you have the enforcement, you're creating these rules, I think, which are beyond the scope of what Congress has implied
Yeah.
or directed.
And you are using this to kind of target people. And again, I'm not talking about the bad actors. I'm talking about lawful businesses who are trying to do the right thing and have minor clerical errors. Let me ask you something real quick. I want to shift gears. Could you describe Spartan? What is Spartan?
Spartan is the name of the general case management system that exists at ATF. It replaced an older system. The system had been in service for many, many years. It was no longer supported, I think, anymore by the technology out there, so we replaced it with the new case management system.
So ATF administrative investigators are tasked with determining whether an FFL willfully did anything. And according to a recent ATF revocation hearing, whether, quote, in preparing the report of violations is the issue of willfulness even a factor, end quote. The ATF director responded, I input data and Spartan does the figuring. So are we allowing AI to determine whether or not something is willful?
I'm so glad you're at. Absolutely not.
So these are humans that make
people, human beings review all of these things at supervisory levels. You cannot revoke somebody without several levels of approval.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're almost done, sir. Thank you for being here for a second time. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Basic question, sir. You're an attorney, correct? That's my understanding.
Oh, real will.
So I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt,
Go
knowing
with
that
the
you understand the
Mustang.
Constitution, including our Bill of Rights, correct?
If I go on with this,
So what is your interpretation of our
thinking about at the end of this.
Americans have the right to bear arms? Yes or no? And just give me your brief overall view of it.
Yes, and I think what we do is we look to what the Supreme Court has decided on this. The Supreme Court, Congressman, has been very clear on this. The law is, the Second Amendment jurisprudence is lengthy and changing, but as a lawyer, I don't get to decide that. The courts decide it, and the courts have said, yes, is the answer to your question.
Okay, so we have these Second Amendment rights because we know how important it is
Let
for
me
us to
take a
maintain
look.
our constitutional republic and a functioning republic because, again, as a gun owner myself, as a lawful gun owner myself, it's very important to me to be able to protect my home and also prevent tyrannical governments from infringing on our rights as human beings bestowed to us in our
He only has a few more minutes.
So it's my humble opinion, sir, that the ATF is certainly infringing on a lot of these rules for law-abiding citizens and infringing on our Second Amendment rights for law-abiding citizens. I'm not talking about trying to catch the bad guys that have guns. I am talking about implementing a level of pain on people like me that, quite frankly, was not bestowed to us via the Second Amendment. Unfortunately, as bureaucrats attempting to infringe on the Second Amendment rights, that some lawmakers in Congress, they see gun owner tragedies as an opportunity to slowly chip away at these rights. So recently, lawmakers used a heartbreaking Uvalde tragedy as an opportunity to pass red flag legislation. This is a fact. I remember a time when we were told that red flag laws were simply a conspiracy theory. I'm old enough to remember that. And they are not a conspiracy theory anymore, sir. Red flag laws are in bills, and they are in Biden's executive orders. If you don't know what red flags are, in short, red flag laws are a type of pre-crime enforcement where courts grant orders allowing for the seizure of firearms from someone who hasn't committed an actual crime. When I think of red flag laws, I see the Safer Communities Act, which President Biden signed into law in 2022. The Safer Communities Act included $750 million in funding for states to implement and improve red flag laws. Again, that's going after the good guys, not the bad guys. But it had to stop there. It has not stopped there, sir. Biden in 2023 announced an executive order on gun control with the goal of, quote, increasing the effective use of red flag laws. Biden also opened the Office of Gun Violence Prevention, led by Kamala Harris, which has further encouraged and entrenched red flag laws across the nation. These are all facts. I'm still waiting for her to tell us what the root causes are of the border crisis, and you're going to try to tell me that Kamala Harris is going to tell us the root causes of gun violence. Good luck with that. Finally, the ATF has expanded upon the Safer Communities Act by issuing a new ruling that in practice will implement universal background checks. I'm going to say the part out loud because we're almost done. Whenever a gun tragedy occurs in this country, we always hear the left say, we have to do something. We have to do more. And then once legislation is passed, my colleagues on the left then say, we have to always do more and more and more and more. I'm going to warn the American people that we have to do more, what we have to do more really, really means. First, they come after AR-15s. Then they come after your sporting rifles. Then they come after your long guns. And then when homicides have not decreased because you take away all of those weapons, and keep in mind the AR-15 is responsible for 6% of homicides in this country, they're going to come after your handguns and disarm our country and disarm our rights and take away our Second Amendment rights that have been given to us by our founding fathers. And rather than take away guns from law-abiding citizens, instead, we should be going after criminals, specifically criminals. The reason why I'm talking about red flag laws is because the American public understands that we're going to start having mission creep here. You go after one thing, you go after another thing, and then there's always more. There's always going to be a fight. We're using tragedies to infringe on rights that have been given to us by our Second Amendment. And as you, being the head of the ATF, I need you to be cognizant and very aware of that. Because most of the people in Texas that are ranch owners, AR-15 owners like myself, combat veterans like myself, we don't need more laws. We'd implement the laws that we have on the books and go after the bad guys that have guns, not the good guys, and that's your job. Thank you so much for being here, sir. And I yield back the rest of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Director, thank you for being here. I apologize. We got to run to votes, and so we're going to sprint out of here. We appreciate you being here for 3.5 hours.
Thank you.
And answering our question. That concludes today's hearing. Without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days to submit additional written questions for the witness or additional materials for the record without objection.
All right, so that is the end. And yeah, let's go to just this. So you'll be seeing this again soon enough. And go follow this. If you see this, the Stupids Play, go follow the YouTube and go follow the Rumble, the Stupids Play. And beyond that, hope you all have a good, well, morning, depending on what time you watch this at. So